Good evening. Welcome to the Town of Islip Planning Board meeting for Wednesday, August 16th. For those of you joining us, if you'd like to speak on an application as a member of the community, please fill out a yellow card on the table as you come in, hand it to the staff, and we'll call you during that application. We ask you to keep your remarks to 3 minutes apiece. For applicants, a reminder that your presentation should be 30 minutes or less. If the item is listed as a public hearing, you can fill out a card and speak on it. If it's listed as a decision item, the public hearing has already been held and the public portion is closed, but you can stay for the deliberation and vote on it. That being said, can everybody please stand for the pledge?
To the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all.
Item 1 on the agenda, site plan modification, public hearing, Joel Beja, West SP 2023-013, west side of North Clinton Avenue, approximately 571 feet north of Montauk Highway, State Route 27A, Bayshore, 26 North Clinton Avenue. Applicant requests buffer, landscaping, and a parking relaxation in connection with a change of use from a house of worship to a daycare as an accessory use. Good evening.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. My name is Susan Hermer. I'm the attorney for the Jewish Center of Bayshore, 3275 Veterans Memorial Highway, Ronkonkoma. So as you know, we want to change the use of the building from a school building to a daycare center. There's apartments that are going up on 4th Avenue. There's going to be a lot of kids. They're going to need daycare. It's something that we really could use, and it's state controlled. So a lot of vetting and everything should be in order. Any questions?
Anything further?
No.
I don't have any cards on this. Anyone come in wish to be heard on this application? Not seeing anyone, I'm going to turn to Mr. Gonzalez to give us a staff report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. This is a residence CAA zone property, approximately 18,000 square feet. It is currently improved with about an 8,600 square foot school building for the Jewish Center of Bayshore, CO'd in 1961. The proposal is to convert the rear 5,100 square feet to a child daycare center, while the remainder of the building is to stay as is, which is the church parochial school, religious and office space. The daycare portion of the building will be entirely separate from the existing use in the front of the building. It will have its own entrance on the side, as well as emergency egress for each classroom. The Jewish Center of Bayshore has entered into an agreement with an experienced child daycare operator who will run the Beverly Johnson's Early Child Care Center at this location. The daycare will service approximately 85 children over the course of the day, ranging from 18 months to 13 years old. Approximately 16 to 18 staff members working various times during the day, and the daycare hours will be from 6 a.m. to 8 p.m. Monday through Friday. Most children are anticipated to arrive between 6 and 8 a.m., and most will depart between 5 and 6 p.m. There will be 6 classrooms holding approximately 12 to 15 children each, with 1 to 2 daycare workers in each classroom. Overall, 78 parking stalls are required, and as the existing building on this site occupies most of the property, there is no parking on site. The Jewish Center also owns the property 2 parcels to the north, which is known as 34 North Clinton, which is the existing synagogue. They will be utilizing that property's parking for these uses. Transportation will be provided by the daycare center, which utilizes small vans picking up the children directly from their homes and dropping them off in front of the daycare building. The vans and employees will park in the synagogue lot. The synagogue typically is open Friday evenings and Saturday mornings with not much use during the week. Given that, the uses are compatible parking-wise. A rear yard asphalt area will be utilized for a playground area, and as this property abuts a residential use and zone, specifically single-family dwellings to the west, it does require a buffer relaxation. There is approximately 8.5 feet from that playground to the property line. Staff recommends that adequate plantings be installed to screen that area and to help mitigate any noise. Planting mitigation may be advisable at the synagogue property to provide visual and noise screening for the now influx of vehicle activity in that rear parking area. However, there is not enough information to determine whether there is room to plant any green screen abutting that property. The landscaping requests are essentially a formalization for the existing site, as the property has been CO'd since 1961. Staff would defer to any comments from the board, or if there's any questions that they have for the applicant.
Any questions from the board? Ms. Frugieri?
I just have one question for the applicant. This property abuts a residential dwelling, and that I see you have an asphalt play area and grassed areas that are fairly close. It's all within the required 25-foot buffer area, which, should not be a problem with the appropriate plantings that planning has suggested. But I also see a 6-foot stockade fence. Do you know how long that stockade fence has been there, or is that proposed to be new?
Does anybody know that, or Joe? This is Joel Beja.
Okay.
I'm Joel Baker. Yeah, okay, sorry. It's as new, all right, the stockade fence,
The stockade fence is as new?
as new, yeah.
Okay, I mean, because I'd like to request that, planning inspect it to make sure that it is new, not only for the privacy of the residential neighbor abutting your property, but also for the safety of the children.
Yeah,
If you have young children playing there, you don't want a fence with gaps in it or something like that.
the property to the south is actually a rental. It's multiple dwelling.
Now, I'm looking at the aerial, and it's, the property would be the west of
The
you.
west would be behind us, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've
Oh,
been.
it's a
I've been
small
in co-
area.
I've been in contact with that owner, and she's fine with everything that we've talked about. The area you're talking about being fenced is to the actual, to the south. And that's taken care of.
No, we're talking about two different things. I'm talking about the small area that runs across your backyard that abuts the property to the
Okay,
west.
there's fencing there. There's
Okay.
fencing there.
So as long as planning feels that's adequate, I'm okay with it. If
Yeah.
there are any improvements or repairs or, replacement that needs to take place, then I would
No,
request that.
that's structurally sound, that's there.
Okay.
Any other further questions from the board? I would just echo Mr. Frugieri's comments that obviously one, subject to the plantings as suggested by the planning department, as well as an inspection of the fence to make sure it's appropriate and in good shape to shield the neighbor to the west. If there are no objections, is there a motion? Mr. Frugieri?
I'll make a motion that, let's see here. I'll make a motion to close this public hearing and grant this application, subject to the applicant and planning agreeing on covenants and planning's inspection of the fences to make sure, number one, it creates a appropriate buffer and safety area for the children.
Okay.
It's a motion by Mr. Frugieri to close the public hearing and grant the application, subject to the covenants and restrictions to be drafted by the planning staff and agreed to by both the planning staff and the applicant, with the one condition added in by the board, which is the inspection of the fence to the west to make sure that it's appropriate. Is there a second? Second by Mr. Bruno. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstentions? The application is granted.
Thank you.
Item number 2 on the agenda, the Bay Club LLC, PB 2022-019, southern end of South Clinton Avenue, Bay Shore Marina, 150 South Clinton Avenue, Bay Shore. Applicant requests a planning board special permit for outside seating accessories for a permitted restaurant in the Business 3 District pursuant to 68-302.1E, and planning board approval for a rooftop tent pursuant to 68-434G. Applicant also requests a planning board special permit for an assembly and social recreation hall pursuant to 68-302.1I. Site plan modifications are also requested as part of the application. Good evening.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Anthony Guardino, partner with the law firm Farrell Fritz, Hopog, New York, representing the applicant, the Bay Club LLC. The Bay Club is the contract lessee, or I think the more accurate term is contract licensee of land that is owned by the town of Islip, located at the Bay Shore Marina. To assist in the presentation tonight, I have with me Michael Dunn from Michael Dunn Architecture. This site is it's kind of a little bit of a unique application because the property is owned by the town. It involves about a 0.6 acre portion of the Bay Shore Marina that will be leased or licensed by the town to the Bay Club for a restaurant. The site is zoned B3 Business 3, located at the southern end of the marina. The site's currently occupied by Nikki's on the Bay, which is a popular seasonal restaurant that can be accessed by car or boat. My client recently acquired the restaurant from Nikki's and is in the process of negotiating a license agreement with the town in order to continue the use of the property for a restaurant, but he would like to make several improvements in order to convert the restaurant from its existing seasonal use to a year-round restaurant. The improvements that are being proposed are roofing over an existing dining deck, which is located on the east side of the building. They want to replace an existing roof over an existing covered indoor dining area, which you may be familiar if you've been there, the glass roofs that move, that doesn't really work because it creates like a greenhouse effect. So they want to replace that roof. They will be adding a 2-story addition with an elevator, a stair, and a vestibule to the front of the restaurant, and a new kitchen and 2 ADA accessible bathrooms on the observation deck. In order to do this work, they will need a special permit for outside seating accessory to the permitted restaurant, and they're also seeking approval to erect a temporary rooftop tent on the observation deck. Site plan modifications are also being requested for parking and for overall and front yard landscaping. I do wish to point out that the applicant has withdrawn the application for the special permit for an assembly and social recreation hall. There seemed to be some confusion there, and then a thought, and I think maybe early on there was some thought about the applicant having weddings in the facility. He has decided he doesn't want to do that, and the weddings are what triggered the need for that special permit, and he has no intention of holding weddings. So we can perhaps modify the call of the meeting there. With regard to the outdoor seating special permit, it is to allow my client to add 88 additional outdoor seats on the first floor. And it's on an existing deck. It's a dining deck on the east side of the building that currently has outdoor seating for 88 seats. They'd like to add 88 more. My client is also proposing to add 75 outdoor seats on the existing rooftop observation deck. That deck has an occupancy of 169 people, but does not allow any seating today. So they want to add 75 seats to the roof. The outdoor seating will comply with all of the requirements for the accessory outdoor seating special permit. And then with regard to the rooftop tent permit, they need that approval from the planning board in order to erect the tent. It is necessary basically to cover some of the dining area to keep people out of the elements and also really to protect them from the sun. The tent will be temporary, less than 180 days or 180 days or less per year. So it will come down each year. And again, all we need is approval from the board. There are no criteria to prove. With regard to the site plan modifications, we need 3. One is to reduce the amount of required parking. This is an interesting situation because the restaurant is sitting in a parking lot, a very large municipal parking lot, but the leased area doesn't include any parking. So we have, I guess, technically no parking, although we have hundreds of parking spaces. So we need a special permit for that. The second special permit is for overall landscaping, to reduce it from the required 20% to about 6%. The third is the front yard landscaping is about half of what is typically required. The site never really complied with the landscaping because the leased area is kind of tight. And we're losing some of the front yard landscaping in order to build this front yard vestibule to be able to put the elevator and the stairs to go up to the second story and to make that deck ADA accessible. That pretty much is it. I just want to point out, I did receive these proposed conditions for the special permit and the site plan modifications from Ms. Wozniak. I did review them with my client, who found them to be acceptable. So That concludes my presentation. I have Michael Dunn here if you want to hear more about the application.
Thank you.
Okay.
I have nobody here who wishes to be heard on this. Anybody come in late who wants to be heard? Not seeing anyone, I'm going to turn to Ms. Wozniak for a staff report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is the property that's currently operated by Nikki's on the Bay. The applicant's looking to do some minor renovations of the existing building, which includes a small front addition to provide a lobby, an elevator, along with facade work and a new permanent canopy over the existing outdoor dining area to the east. That's the 88 seats. And then in addition, the applicant wants to have 75 rooftop dining seats and then a rooftop tent over a portion of those seats for rain and sun protection. The proposed changes provide nice improvements to the building, but will require parking and landscaping relaxations due to the front addition and increase in seating. And like Anthony mentioned, the lease line is where they calculate all of the parking and landscaping, so they can't include everything at the marina. But there's no anticipated significant increase in parking demand because it does seem like the property is currently operating with the rooftop seats and those outdoor dining seats. So although it wasn't permitted, it's operating that way and we're not aware of any parking issues. So the new application would extend the use into the winter months as this operator is looking to be open year-round, except for January and February. All music and live entertainment would be limited to inside, and there are no known violations with this property. So planning recommends the board grant the application subject to the attached conditions.
Thank you. Questions from the board? Mr. Frugieri?
Mr. Guardino, seeing that this is town property, do you still have to apply to the Suffolk County Health Department for approval, your sanitary flow?
I'm sure we do. Again, I'm certain that's the case. We're adding seats. So
Yeah, you're adding substantial seats, and I'm sure the Southwest Sewer District can accommodate those seats, but I just want to make sure that the plan is reviewed by the Suffolk County Health
yeah,
Department.
let me just check with the architect, see how far along we are. Has it been done? Has not been done, but they know they have to do it. Yes.
Okay, as long as that's
Yes.
okay,
Yes, thank you.
and I would suggest we just add that to the conditions.
And either Mr. Guardino or Ms. Wozniak, can you clarify, there currently are the seats there that are just being legalized by this, or they're adding 88 in addition to I'm not following the number of seats.
So I've never been to Nikki's on the Bay, but from pictures online, it looks like there are currently rooftop seats. I don't know how many, but the 88 seats are existing. They're just replacing a temporary canopy with a permanent one. So there's no addition of 88 seats on the first floor. The first floor, the number of seats are staying the same. They're technically legalizing those rooftop seats. So the addition would be the 75.
Is that your understanding also, Mr. Guardino?
It is. I came late to this party with this application, and I just asked the architect, and he says, yes, we're trying to.
I just want to make sure because what you said was
Yes.
different than what she said, so I wanted to make sure we're on the same
I
page.
was going to go there after this meeting, so I'll confirm with you in the morning.
Anything further from the board?
Mr. Chairman?
Ms.
Yep.
Brown?
Yeah, Ms. Gorman, are the gas stocks remaining there? Gasoline docks?
Yes, that's shown on the plan, and that's going to remain. Yes.
And also there's a, like a tourist boat that comes up. Is that town property or is that within the restaurants?
Well, the restaurant's lease line only goes up to the dock.
Right.
You know, obviously, the
There's
boat's
a-
not on.
There's a commuter boat, which is like a party boat, a small one that comes in for private parties that I see docking there. I was just curious, is that part of this property or is that part of the town
I
property?
don't know. I'm going to ask if I. It's just, I'm sorry, the architect is telling me
I'll
it's just
speak- I'll-
south.
I'll speak to them.
Yeah, it's just south, and yeah, it's the town of Islip property.
All right. And I would agree with Ms. Wozniak and yourself that those seats have been there for many years, and we have a new owner that's trying to do everything right.
Anything further from the board? Anything further from the applicant?
Nothing further.
Is there a motion?
What was the recommendation?
Then Mr. Bruno?
Make a motion that we delete the part of the application where there's a request for assembly and social recreation hall and grant the application subject to the covenants and restrictions.
With the addition of the health, with the addition of the Suffolk County Health Department.
And that the application be the subject and go for approval with the Suffolk County Health Department.
So motion by Mr. Bruno to grant the application with the deletion of the request for a special permit for assembly and social recreation hall, subject to the covenants and restrictions with the addition of Mr. Frugieri's request on the Suffolk County Health Department. Is there a second? Second by Mr. Frugieri, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions, the application is granted.
Thank you. Can I, just as a point of clarification, what was being proposed are conditions? Are they going to become covenants? No, okay,
Conditions.
conditions. Thank you. Just wanted to clarify. Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Item 3 on the agenda, Planning Board application, public hearing, Fifth XNY LLC, PB 2023-003, west side of Fifth Avenue, County Route 13, approximately 500 feet south of McAdam Street, Bay Shore. 1612 Fifth Avenue, applicant requests 2 Planning Board special permits for the outside overnight parking of tractor trailers and unattached box trailers pursuant to 68-340.1 C and P. Site plan modifications are also requested as part of the application. Good evening to the applicant.
Sorry. There you go. Thank you so much. Good evening again, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Anthony Guardino, law firm Farrell Fritz, Hopog, New York, representing the applicant Fifth XNY LLC. I actually have some cards as well. I'll hand them up to you. Great. So the applicant is the owner of the subject property, which is located at 1612 Fifth Avenue in Bay Shore. The applicant is an affiliate of Zeebeck Real Estate, which is a privately held real estate company that develops buildings like this, industrial and warehouse uses across the country to meet this ever-growing demand that we're witnessing. To assist in the presentation, I have with me Chris Robinson, a civil engineer with R&M Engineering, and also Wayne Muller, a traffic engineer with R&M Engineering. The site in question is about 22 and a half acres in size. It is located on the west side of Fifth Avenue in Bay Shore. It is zoned Industrial 1 and is located in an area of Bay Shore that is characterized by a number of large industrial and commercial uses. The site was, you may know the site as Hubbard Sand and Gravel. That's what the previous owner and occupant was, Hubbard Sand and Gravel. They used the site as a sand mine and for a materials storage yard. Today, the site is largely vacant except for a one-story, about 5,000 square foot Butler-type building that is located in the northeast corner of the site. The site is surrounded to the north and to the south by industrial uses that are located in both the I-1 and I-2 districts. To the east of the site, you have industrial and commercial uses, and then beyond that, you have residences. And then there are homes located to the west of the site whose rear yards back up to the property. My client is seeking to redevelop the site with a one-story, 241,000 roughly square foot warehouse building that would have 67 loading docks, 89 truck parking spaces, and 10 detached trailer parking spaces, and a total of 354 parking spaces, but that will include 146 land bank spaces, so actual paved spaces would be 208. Warehouse buildings of this type are expressly permitted in the I-1 district, but special permits are required for the outdoor overnight parking of trucks and unattached trailers. With the exception of the site plan modification that is needed for parking, which is a modest 8.3% reduction, and to request to eliminate the dumpster enclosures that are required by the land development regulations, proposal fully complies with all of the zoning regulations of the district. The building was designed and the site was designed to be well under the 35% maximum floor area ratio, and also to comply with the height requirements of the district and the setback requirements. The site even meets the requirements of the overall landscaping and front yard landscaping, which is typically not the case with applications of this type. The building as proposed, originally proposed, was oriented. It was turned roughly 90 degrees so that the loading docks were originally located on the east and west sides of the building. However, there was a recommendation made by the planning department early on that the building be kind of turned 90 degrees so that the loading docks face north and south towards the industrial uses and not towards the residences to the west. That the site plan that you have before you shows the building as reoriented with the loading docks facing north and south. With a special permit from this board in the I-1 district, businesses can have outdoor or overnight parking of registered vehicles as an accessory use to a permitted principal use, and this warehouse is a permitted principal use, provided that all vehicles are set back a minimum distance of 50 feet from any street, 200 feet from any residential zone or use, and that the vehicles are properly screened from view with fencing or landscaping. This site complies with those requirements. With respect to the special permit from the planning board for outside parking of unattached box trailers, the criteria are similar. There are a few more. They cannot be located in the front yard or in the secondary front yard, and they can't be visible from any right-of-way, which they are not. They have to be set back the same 200 feet from any residential use and 50 feet from any street. The trailers have to be completely screened from view by fencing and landscaping or berms. That is the case here. The number of parked trailers cannot exceed 10. This application originally proposed more, and it was reduced down to 10. And of course, the site has to be safely designed to the satisfaction of the engineering department. And then, of course, all trailers have to be registered. So we comply with all of those requirements. Before I turn it over to Mr. Robinson to explain the site plan, I do want to point out in the course of the review of the site plan and special permit applications, the planning department recently made a number of suggestions to improve the site plan and to mitigate the impacts of the use on adjacent properties. Some of those requests were easily complied with. In fact, I think Mr. Robinson made some changes already to address some of those. Some of them are a little bit more challenging, going to require some creative engineering, which I'm sure he'll be able to do. I just want to leave the board with, my client is committed to addressing the concerns that were raised, and we are confident that we can work with the planning staff to resolve any open issues. So at this point, I'd just like to turn it over to Chris, if we could.
Chris Robinson, President of R&M Engineering, 50 Elm Street, Huntington, New York. As Mr. Guardino mentioned, we received some recent comments from the planning staff regarding the plan, and we've been able to make a few modifications to the site, which was uploaded to the planning site, I think, yesterday, but and it's in front of you in a reduced size copy. We were able to increase the buffer at the westerly side of the site, reducing down the asphalt driveway in the back, increasing that buffer to 74 feet, reducing the drive aisle to 26. We've indicated that we'll put a sound attenuating fence behind the curb on the west side of that westerly drive aisle to help buffer to the residential neighborhood that's to the west. Being 26 foot that drive aisle, we do like to keep the ability for traveling between either side of the building along that aisle, but it's our anticipation that for the most part that drive aisle will only be used for emergency services to circumnavigate the building. One of the other requests from staff was to provide and fully comply with the front yard landscaping requirement. Based on the configuration of this property, we have a limited frontage on Fifth Avenue. So we had previously asked for a 10,000 square foot relaxation of the front yard landscaping component. But with this plan that you have in front of you, we've asking for a parking waiver of a little over 8%, and we're providing the full front yard landscaping. As you can see on the front along Fifth Avenue, there's going to be a substantial landscape buffer from the street, which will help to hide the building from any motorists that travel on Fifth Avenue. We've also provided sound attenuating fencing that'll run along the entire southerly curb line, which will also help buffer the sound from the church that exists just to the southeast of our property, and it'll be combined with the large buffering and berming that we already have in the southwest corner. The trailer storage and the truck parking area is isolated on the north component of the site backing up against the Fifth Avenue self-storage facility, behind the car wash and the fast lube, that's at 1608 Fifth Avenue, and bounded on the west by Islip Yards, which is a large outdoor storage of industrial and site development products, and then bounded on the south side by a landscape island and our building itself. So the outdoor storage and truck parking area is completely screened on all four sides to help meet the conditions of the special use permit. Additionally, there was a comment made regarding providing of solar panels on the roof of the building. It is our client's intent to provide solar. The structure of the building is designed to provide solar anywhere on the roof of the building. The final configuration of that, we don't know at this point. It's going to be subject to the tenancies that occur in the building. Tenants may put solar over their area they get the benefit for, or the developer may put solar where the third party provides the benefit to the developer. That these details have not yet been worked out. They won't until we have tenants in the building or tenants leasing the building. But the entire rooftop of this building is designed to support the weight of the of solar panels. I'd be happy to walk the board through any other comments you may have on the plan, but that addresses the comments that were recently added to the package this past week by planning. I provided a blow-up of the aerial photograph of what looks like today, a rendered site plan, and some building elevations and renderings attached to the hand-up that was just given to you, and I'd be happy to go through anything in detail if you'd like.
Thank you. Anything further, Mr. Guardino? We'll turn to public hearing. Mr. Brown?
Vincent Trapani.
My name is Vince Trapani. I own a property that borders it. The idea of the concept of the fact that the increase of the size of the building was not on this sheet, so I'm sorry, because I was in totally 100% in favor of the building. So there's no question about that in my mind and my heart. What I do have a question on is the fact that, bottom line, right now, the ground itself was raised. I have a wall, right? And the wall was 4 feet higher than the ground. With that there, they raised all of the property all along, and they raised it to 4 feet. So for my words, God forbid, in case somebody was to walk there, we were getting ready to put up a fence because of what they did. So the reality is the concern was the fact that, God forbid, somebody was walking by, especially with that neighborhood, all right? The possibilities of somebody getting hurt was a major concern to me as far as that structure. The ground itself, and I have the pictures, so if in the event that you wanted them, it'd be my pleasure to give them to you. You can actually see where this was the wall, and this is where we are now. So the reality is as far as that ground. And I realize the fact that that's where they did the boring of 4 feet. So this was the ground, and this is where you bored. Okay, you're down 4 feet. You bored nothing. You're boring. So as a reality in the situation like that, I was concerned. The idea of the project that you want to build a building, love it, think it's phenomenal, the whole bit. Right now, looking at the property, looking at what it was, looking where it was polluted, and the environmental that was done, that was put in the circle, they just forgot the other holes. So in all sincerity, that's what it is. And then my property's there, love it, love the idea of doing it. I love the idea of Islip growing stronger and stronger and stronger, and this is what it's really about. But it comes right down to it, it's a matter of the safety for our people and for them too. And if you looked at it, you'd look at it and say, I can't believe this. And one part was mined out, and there's a pond, a large pond there, which I'm sure you're aware of, right? So there's a large pond over there, and that's, I guess, where the dirt came from. When they were doing the borings, I turned around, I said to them, what are you doing? Oh, we're boring down 3-4 feet. You put more than that in dirt on top of it. So what'd you bore? I do wholeheartedly, totally in favor of the idea of building the building. I love the idea of the fact of creating jobs for the people of Islip, even parking trucks there. Whatever the scenario is that makes it to the better and the righteous thing for Islip, that's what I want. And that's what I'll do. And I thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else come in who did not fill out a card wish to be heard on the application? Not seeing anyone, I'm going to turn to Ms.
We're done?
Wozniak. Yeah,
Thank you.
Ms. Wozniak for a staff report. Oh, I'll make sure I speak directly into it for you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The property is located on the west side of Fifth Avenue, north of the Southern State Parkway, and is currently the site of a sand and gravel company. The applicant is looking to redevelop the entire site for use as a warehouse and distribution center. A 240,000 square foot building with 63 loading docks and the overnight parking of 89 tractor trailers and 10 unattached box trailers is proposed. A traffic impact study was submitted with the application, and there were concerns raised regarding the number of crashes along this section of Fifth Avenue due to poor levels of service and long delays. It was recommended to restrict turning movements out of the site to help minimize potential crashes. However, that would create a significant number of truck travel miles to the roadway network, as trucks would need to travel to Sunrise Highway in order to go north. Ultimately, the county has jurisdiction over access to Fifth Avenue, and the applicant has submitted email correspondence from the county DPW agreeing with their proposed access driveways. The traffic impact study also notes that the anticipated peak parking for the use would be around 94 stalls. So the applicant has revised the plan to request an 8% parking relaxation with room for 146 land bank stalls in order to meet the landscaping requirements. This reduction in parking to provide compliant landscaping is preferred. In addition, the applicant has provided a 74-foot vegetated berm along the western property line and has included EV charging stations. Overall, the site plan addresses many of planning's concerns. However, there is a significant number of proposed loading docks and the truck parking, which is concerning given the residential community to the west. It is recommended that the sound attenuation wall be increased in height and to limit the drive aisle to the west of the building for emergency access only in order to deter truck movements closest to those residential homes. This will be a type 1 action, so planning would recommend the board reserve decision in order to submit the required documents to the county for the review and to address any of the comments we hear tonight.
Thank you. Any questions from the board? Ms. Cruz?
Fine.
My question is, how many tenants? Is it just, do you have anything in mind yet, or?
They do not have tenants right now, and there's a possibility, the way the building is set up, that it could be up to 4, but I mean, it could be 1.
Okay,
We don't know. We do not have I know, Kelly, you asked me that, and I apologize, I didn't respond. But we do not know who the tenant is. We don't have a tenant.
Thank you. Mr. Ruggiero?
Yeah, I have a question both for the applicant and for planning. And it's regarding the drainage concern, not the drainage, the grading concern that was raised. Can the applicant address that? I'm sure you did a grading plan with your application.
Address the.
I'll be honest with you, I didn't follow it. What the
Okay.
comment was, I wasn't sure what he's meant. Yeah, there are
Okay.
definitely some drainage holes on this property. They
Well, it
definitely-
wasn't drainage hole, it was that the elevation of the property was raised at least 4 feet. And the question is, what type of material was used to raise it? They probably dug holes and to get to the sand, and then took the fill and put it on another part of the site. And I guess the question is going to be, how does that impact the drainage on the site? And how does that impact the suitability for development on the site? Can that raised soil support, is that good soil to support a building on?
Yeah, we had an extensive geotechnical report done. We've drilled a lot of holes through the property to determine it. There are areas where there's some significant depth of the fill. It's a lot more than 4 feet. It's certainly in the middle of the site where it appeared to have been sand mined and backfilled. There are large areas of the site where there is natural material underneath, and we're concentrating the drainage to the east side and to the north side where we have the natural material. There may be some excavation, recompaction, maybe even piles that need to be supported in the middle where those fill areas are concerned, but that's all being taken into account with the grading plan and the structural plans.
Will they be using any of that filled area to fill in low points on the site during the
We'll
development?
be definitely moving earth around in order to re-level it and recompact it. Some areas may have to be dug out and recompacted in controlled fill layers to get that structural need we do, but we will be moving earth around.
Yeah, those are standard practices.
Exactly. And we were creating that large area to the south side of the site. We have an area there if there are some unsuitable structural material, a lot of organics, that kind of stuff, where we can create some berming there and fill it in to eliminate the trucking back and forth to remove things.
And Kelly, has engineering reviewed the grading and drainage plans?
When they submit before planning board, we only request a conceptual plan. So I'm unaware if one was created or submitted, but if you want, we can have them submit one and I can have engineering take a look at that and maybe their test boring, because I'm not an expert in that. So
Right,
maybe I
right.
can just have them take a look at it. If one's done, I don't know if it takes long for them to make one if it's not done.
I think due to the difference in the grades that were expressed this evening, that engineering should take a look at a grading plan and drainage plan to make sure it's suitable and acceptable.
We have a full engineering set of drawings at this point. We've actually have submitted them in. Engineering did get a preliminary look at it. They normally don't get their official look until after the planning board approval, when we make the application to the engineering department. But we did get some preliminary feedback from them that was incorporated into our designs.
Okay. I don't know how the rest of the board feels, but I'd like to have the drainage approved prior to our approval in this case. Okay.
Anything further from the board? I concur with Mr. Frugier on that as well. So if we can get that submitted, if it's already submitted, get it reviewed. If there's nothing further, anything further from the applicant? Is there a motion? Oh,
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Brown?
yeah, I'd like to make a motion to reserve tonight, close the public hearing, to give staff time to review the engineering report.
It's a motion by Mr. Brown to close the public hearing and reserve decision this evening and give the staff the opportunity to send the plan to the engineering staff for review. Is there a second? Second by Ms. Cruz. All in favor? Opposed, abstentions were reserved. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks. Have a good night.
Next item on the agenda, Planning Board application, public hearing, 86 MJ Boulevard LLC, PB 2023-023, west side of MJ Boulevard, 3,260 feet north of Suffolk Avenue, County Route 100, Brentwood, 86 MJ Boulevard. Applicant requests a Planning Board special permit for the outdoor overnight parking of registered vehicles as an accessory to use to a warehouse use in the Industrial 1 District pursuant to 68-340.1C. Site plan modifications are also requested as part of the application. Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Allison Lapointe with the firm Sir Tillman Ballin with offices in Hauppauge, New York. I'm here on behalf of 86 MJ Boulevard. We are seeking a special permit from the board for outdoor overnight parking of registered vehicles, as well as certain site plan modifications. The documents that are being handed up to you now include a alternate site configuration dated July 31st, 2023. I apologize, it's in a smaller format. Floor plans and elevations dated April 3, 2023. Photographs taken of 12 properties along MJ Boulevard on August 15th, 2023. Google images of 7 properties along MJ with their FARs noted. Aerial images of MJ Boulevard with the FAR percentages noted, and a ZBA approval for 110 MJ Boulevard. The subject property is owned and operated by Metro Star, which is a distribution group. They distribute paper and plastic goods, dry goods, rice, flour, sugar, etc. 90% of their distribution is here on Long Island, and they distribute mostly to mom and pop industries, delis, bakeries, restaurants, pizza places. They've been in business for 25 years, but have been operating out of this location since 2010. And they purchased the property in particular because of the rail spur that is behind the property. They receive bulk deliveries of these products and then sell them by unit to be delivered to end users. And again, we are seeking the special permit for the overnight parking for the fleet of delivery vehicles. The purpose of the addition is strictly warehouse. You'll see from the floor plans that we've planned for 3 rows of rack storage and 2 drive aisles for forklifts to operate. The need for the additional square footage is twofold. The owner wishes to transition away from tractor trailer deliveries and to take more advantage of the rail spur behind the building. This means that they're going to need more storage as a rail truck brings in far more material, which is about 4 tractor trailers worth of material on each delivery. But at the same time, it's more unpredictable because deliveries are determined on Long Island Railroad schedules and can also be impacted by backlog. They could have no rail deliveries for weeks. They could have 4 in 1 week. So you have to have the opportunity to be able to unload these, which have to be unloaded by hand. And you only have 2 days to hand unload these these cars. So you have to have the space to be able to move it quickly. So that is the reason behind the size of the addition. The plans before the board, the revised plans of July 3, 2023, show the shifting of the overnight parking towards the rear of the property. This was in response to a comment that I had received from the planning department that the original plan having those spaces closer to the property line had some concerns regarding their screening. So we have given an alternate plan, if that is the board's preference, to move those trucks to the rear of the property. MJ Boulevard, the industrial corridor that is MJ Boulevard, has been developed between the 1960s and the 1990s. It is fully developed. And really continuously developed. All of the buildings are towards the rear of the property with all of the parking and truck maneuvering and bays along the front. At the time, this met what was considered industrial standard. We recognize that industrial standards have modernized, expecting more screening, expecting more landscaping, but the vast majority of this corridor has been developed by the old standards. It is very consistent all the way up and down the corridor. You'll see from the photographs I've submitted, you'll see little to no screening for most of these buildings from the property line. And it'll be very difficult for any of these properties to comply with modern standards, because the only way to do that would be to essentially demolish the buildings, move them forward, and then to move these uses behind the building. The structures there range somewhere between 10,000 square feet to about over 500,000 square feet, so there is kind of a mix in size. As you can see, we are providing 62 parking spaces where 76 are required, so we do require a small amount of relief for that. Currently, the site maintains a mere 8 parking spaces, so this will be a dramatic improvement for the parking availability at the site. With the addition, we're expecting approximately 4 to 8 new employees. Currently, there are 40 people employed by the company. Landscaping, from the original plan you have reviewed, provides 13.94%. The revised plan, if you prefer the rear location of the trucks, would be up to 14.24%. As again, you can see from the pictures, no one in this corridor comes anywhere near being able to comply with the 20%. And I think we would actually, in this instance, become a excellent standard for revitalization of the area at these limits. Again, the special permit we are seeking is for 7 box trucks for the delivery fleet. With the new location in the rear, there's additional screening because you're not only going to be screened from the roadway by the existing buffer against the roadway, but as well as all of the regular parking spaces and pushing it back towards the rear of the property. The only people that traverse MJ Boulevard are people who are going to someplace on MJ Boulevard. While we recognize that this area does abut a residential neighborhood, there is a parallel road through the residential neighborhood, Eisenhower Avenue. So there is really no reason for residents to be traversing this area unless either they work there, which is often the case, or they made a wrong turn. So the people who are accessing these properties are there because they're accessing an industrial property. Overall, we believe that we recognize that we have not met the exact letter of the modern land development standards. We believe that in this plan, we have met the spirit of it. We have gotten as close as you can on this site to meet the new regulations with as much sensitivity as possible, so that way we can ensure that this use can continue at this location, as well as reducing the number of tractor trailers that are going to have to access the site through the residential zone. If we're able to transfer some of this use to the rail car, you'll see fewer tractor trailers accessing the site, which is a net gain for the entirety of the corridor. And with that, if you have any questions, I'm happy to field them.
Thank you. I do not have any cards. Anybody come in later wish to be heard on this application? Not seeing anyone, I'm going to turn to Ms. Wozniak for a report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The property is located on the west side of MJ Boulevard in Brentwood, and it's improved with a 37,000 square foot industrial building. The applicant's looking to get the special permit for the outdoor overnight parking of 7 trucks in connection with an 8,500 square foot building expansion. The expansion will require a 43% parking relaxation, a 32.5% overall landscaping relaxation, and a 61.5% front yard landscaping relaxation. The building will also require ZBA approval for FAR. It is important to note that the parallel parking stalls on the south of the property will be difficult for cars to get in and out of, given the limited site circulation, because the building is pushed all the way to the back of the property. So the parking relaxation could be higher once the site plan gets fully reviewed. The trucks will be parked on the north side of the property in angled stalls over 50 feet from the street and will be screened by some landscaping, but full screening will be difficult. The applicant has revised the location of the truck parking from previous submittals. However, the truck turning movements still seem a bit tight and the relaxations are significant. After conversations with the applicant, a reduction in the size of the addition or shape is not really feasible given their racking system and need for more space. Currently, it does seem like the property operates with minimal parking, and planning has drafted conditions that require the applicant to come back before the board should parking issues occur. In addition, the applicant would need to pay a landscape mitigation fee for the landscaping relaxation. So planning has prepared draft conditions should the board be okay with the relaxations and truck turning movements.
Thank you. Questions from the board? Mr. Brown? Ms. Frugieri?
Where on the plan is the outdoor storage proposed for?
So the initial submission that was submitted to the board showed the outdoor storage on the north side of the property and kind of the parking spaces, it says 7 fleet parking spaces.
Yeah.
In the revision, we flipped the employee parking and that parking for the latter set of plans that were circulated is what you should be looking at. So the fleet parking would be at the complete rear of the property, where the employee parking would add additional buffer.
Okay.
So we
So
wanted
that's
to give
what-
both alternatives in case you had a preference.
Okay. So you're proposing it's the 7 fleet parking is where you're going to overnight? Okay.
That is correct.
The only issue that I see with that is to have the trucks exit the site, to have to back down a narrow alley and then make a turning movement to get out of the site, which is right near the apron to the entrance to the property. So if cars are coming in, as they're backing out, I can see potential conflicts there. I don't see another better way, but that was all I had, just a comment, not a
Well,
question.
just to expand on that,
Certainly.
these are tractor trailers, right?
No, the fleet parking are not tractor trailers. They're
What are
box
they?
trucks. Box
Box
trucks.
trucks?
Yes. So the tractor trailers, so if you look at your circulation page, the tractor trailers access and currently do at this time, access the southern portion of the property now for whatever trailer deliveries we receive. And so that circulation is presently operational and how the site has always been accessed because that was how it's designed and CO'd. So the only addition to new circulation on the site would be the circulation of the box trucks on the north side of the property.
But I would concur with my colleague in reference to those trucks backing out and having to make a turn to head out of the facility.
So they're essentially doing the same thing, but on the south side of the property now. This is, these tight side yards, again, the development pattern throughout MJ, this is how they were designed and this is how they've been operating for years. It really would be very similar traffic patterns. It's just actually reducing the intensity of it on one side of the building and spreading it between two sides. We're not increasing the fleet. This is the current fleet. But because we are coming in for the addition, we get to come into compliance with the entirety of the code. So there's not going to be an intensity when it comes to the truck traffic. And again, we're proposing that in the long term with the addition, there'll be a de-intensification because we're going to have less tractor trailers coming to the site.
Right, and just because they've been doing it a long time like that doesn't mean it's the best way to do it.
No, I recognize
But I
that,
would stand
certainly.
by, agreeing with my colleague in reference to that traffic pattern to exit, and we should really take a hard look at that to see if there's a better way. I don't see it looking at it right now.
Yeah.
But we really should take a look to see if there's a better way.
We have submitted the plans you have before you are the third proposal for the location of the overnight parking. So we have been pretty diligent in our efforts to make sure that everything operates, because it's in my own client's best interest that everything operates.
Mr. Frugieri, then Mr. Bruno.
There is one distinction that I see between the proposed turning movements and the one that you have as existing. The tractor trailers come into the site, and then their backing movement is down the aisle into the loading dock. So when they're pulling out of the site and they're going out the driveway apron, they're in a forward motion. On the other side with the box trucks, they're pulling in straight, and then what they're doing is they're backing out. They're backing up right where the apron is, and that's where cars might be coming in as they're backing out. That's the conflict I see that I would like to try to have you and planning work out how we can avoid that.
Certainly.
I'm not opposed to the application.
No,
Just
understood.
concerned about that turning movement.
Understood.
That's the point. I'm just trying to find out, those box trucks, now they're overnight, do they go out in the morning? How often, going with my colleagues, how often are they making this movement?
So-
Is this only once a day? Is this during the whole course of the day? How often are they coming to the site and leaving the site?
I don't have the answer for that, but I can certainly ask my client. Generally, their hours of operation are actually relatively brief. They operate from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. So this isn't like a 24/7 operation where deliveries are coming and going throughout the day. My guess at this point would be that certainly everything gets preloaded at the 8 a.m. hour and they go out for one round of deliveries. If there's a second round of deliveries, I don't know. But I can get that answer for you, certainly. Certainly.
Mr. Frugieri?
I mean, just as a way of a suggestion, you might want to, with the box trucks, you might want to reverse the movements. So in other words, have them come in and back into their spots. And then as they're leaving the site, they're going in a forward motion so they can see cars coming in. That's just a suggestion.
Thank you.
Anything further from the board? Anything further from the applicant? Is there a motion? Mr. Frugieri?
I'll make a motion that we close the public hearing and reserve decision on this application, giving the applicant time to work out the issues we discussed tonight with planning.
It's a motion by Mr. Frugieri to close the public hearing and reserve decision, giving the applicant time to work out the issues raised this evening. Second by Mr. Brown. All in favor? Opposed? Abstentions? The application is reserved. Thank you.
Thank you.
Town Board application, public hearing, U-Haul Company of Long Island, CZ 2023-012, west side of Lincoln Avenue, approximately 1,556 feet north of Church Street, Holbrook, 1110 Lincoln Avenue. Applicant requests a modification of covenants and restrictions associated with TC 5211 and a planning board special permit for the overnight parking of registered vehicles pursuant to 68-340.1C. Site plan modifications are required as part of the application. Good evening.
Hey, good evening. Good evening, Matthew Aylward, R&M Engineering. Address is 50 Elm Street in Huntington. Last name is Aylward. Lost my paperwork. There we go. We're here on behalf of U-Haul at 1110 Lincoln Avenue in Holbrook. They're currently functioning as a mini warehouse self-storage with an office building and outdoor storage in the rear. The application here tonight is we're looking for a special permit to park overnight vehicles and to modify TC 5211. TC 5211 was a change of zone application that was made in 2015. The application was approved. The TC 5211 designated the parcel from I-1 to I-2 and granted permission for outdoor storage. Pretty much what they're doing on the parcel now in the back half. At some point in time, the proper paperwork was never fully filed, so the change of zone didn't take effect. So it's still considered Industrial 1. At this time, U-Haul is looking to change their operations from removing the outdoor storage and moving more towards a community-oriented, community-friendly truck sharing, moving type of thing. So what they have is they have U-boxes. U-boxes are containers that get shipped to your house. You load the U-box, and then it comes back to this facility. They don't want to store the U-boxes outside, so they're proposing we're proposing 35,000 square foot warehouse to house these U-boxes. Okay, and as part of this, what happens is the U-box comes in, drops off, and it gets loaded in here. The customer's materials stay in the U-box until they want them. There's an opportunity for the customer to come if they needed something, but it's mostly stored there until it needs to go to the next destination. All right. Additionally, the special permit is for the overnight parking of the U-Haul truck sharing vehicles here. All right. I have someone from U-Haul with us who can kind of describe that process a little bit better. We're not proposing any modifications to the front, aside from widening the driveway to allow the trucks to get in the back. So what you see today at 1110 is pretty much what you're going to see. I also have some handouts that you could see the conceptual render of what we're proposing. So this is Sean Brenthouse. He can explain a little bit more of the process, how it goes.
Great,
Good evening, Chairman and members of the board. Sean Brenthouse, attorney on behalf of U-Haul. So my colleague just explained the U-boxes are essentially meant to drop off at the customer's home, and then we'll need the overnight parking. So when we collect the items from their home to then bring back to the warehouse and then store inside. We see this as like a shifting sort of business model, and it especially helps the members of the community so they don't have to go out and rent the trucks. They can sort of do it themselves. It's a do-it-yourself approach. And they can store the items, temporarily on their property, loaded, and then have us then come pick them up without them having to rent the vehicle, visit the U-Haul location. So the idea is also that it will reduce the costs. It'll, be easier for the customer to take control of what they would like to put in the storage, and then have these vehicles be stored on location in the evening, and then out again the next day to pick up the items if they're on call. We see it as a benefit, especially if someone doesn't have a license, if there's a disabled person who can't rent the vehicle. They just have the U-box, on their property temporarily to put in what they would need, and then brought back to the U-Haul location. So we're essentially centralizing the storage, the concept of storing or the storage, rather than having rental trucks go out or being rented from the site. That's all I had to really say about that.
Anything further?
Not really. Any questions?
I have no cards on this. Anybody come in late wish to be heard on this application? Not seeing anyone, I'm going to turn to Mr. Colgan for a staff report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. The applicant did a good job of introducing the history, so I'll just briefly go over the changes on request. The proposed warehouse use is permitted in the Industrial 1 District. This use is kind of like a hybrid of a warehouse and self-storage, as it is used to store personal goods. However, the goods are not directly accessible by customers, as would be in a customary self-storage warehouse. The conceptual site plan exceeds landscaping requirements and has a 29-stall parking relaxation, or 30% overall of requirements. Again, given that the pod warehouse is not expected to generate significant traffic, the magnitude of the parking relaxation does not seem alarming. Variances will be needed from the Zoning Board of Appeals, including side and rear yard variances, which require a distance equal to the height of the building when it's over 35 feet, and this building is just over 38 feet in height. The board may wish to give consideration to requiring the building to be set back further from the property lines to more closely conform with the code. There are buildings with about 10-foot setbacks in the area, but they do not appear as tall. The applicant could better comply with the setbacks if the amount of overnight parking to the south was further reduced, or if some of the aisles could be reduced in width. The proposed building is industrial looking in nature and will be behind the existing building with neutral colors. The applicant could consider adding some celestial windows along the top where it will be visible from the street and ensure there will be no rooftop mechanical equipment, as this would be difficult to screen. Additional visual interest could be provided with a horizontal band of different colors or textured panel along the top or bottom of the building. Given the previous history on the site and the nature and character of the area, the staff has no objection to the spirit of the request for the building. The staff will leave it up to the board to determine if the board wants to impose additional setbacks or architectural improvements to the applicant submission.
Thank you. Before we ask questions, can you speak to Mr. Colgan's 2 points he's raised? I mean, does the height of the building need to stay 38.75 feet, or can it go down to 35?
Yeah, we'll review that. I mean, I would leave that to the team. It's not something that seems unreasonable, but I think we'd have to see how it would work.
Okay, so why don't we review that with the planning staff as well as the architectural? He made some architectural recommendations, I think.
Yeah, which we're open to.
Perfect. Is there anything further from the board? Mr. Brown?
Clarify that point. Coming down to 35 feet, Sean, that the 10-foot setback would be fine?
Then it would be compliant, that's correct.
If not, we'd be looking for 28 feet off the line at 38 feet. 28 more feet.
I just don't want to speak on behalf of the
38
client, so definitely they understand what we're committing to, but that
Right.
sounds reasonable.
So give it careful consideration.
Anything further from the board? Anything further from the applicant? Is there a motion? Mr. Matamore? Thank you. There's a motion by Mr. Matamore to close the public hearing and reserve decision. Is there a second? Second by Mr. Bruno. All in favor? Opposed, abstentions? We are reserved. Thank you.
Thank you.
Town Board application, public hearing, 63 Ocean Avenue Partners LLC, CZ 2023-013, east side of Ocean Avenue, approximately 1,675 feet south of Main Street, State Route 27A, Bay Shore, 63 and 65 Ocean Avenue. Applicant requests a change of zone for an overlay of Planned Landmark Preservation District and a Town Board special permit pursuant to Town Code Section 68-451.A3 in order to modify the use requirements of the underlying district in order to construct 14 senior citizen apartments. Site plan modifications are required as part of the application. Good evening to the applicant. I'm just going to ask the applicant if we have those in handouts for the board. Can you turn those renderings around so that people can see them? Just going to repeat that. Since we have those packets, can we turn those around for the community that's here to see what's being proposed?
Yes, yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Raymond Justa, I represent the applicant. This is an application to change the zoning of the subject property to a PLP district, Plan Landmark Preservation District. With me tonight is David Bush, our architect. He's going to be answering most of your specific questions and talk about the historical nature of the property. Hopefully you can see from our packet that we've submitted, the subject of the application is historically significant shingle-style residence. Also located on the property, there's one other residential building toward the back and a boathouse. It's the intention of our client to preserve and protect these buildings as part of this PLP, as part of the PLP district. The proposal is to, while preserving the primary structure and the other structures, is to convert the property to senior citizen living. The proposal is to convert the existing main residence into 3 units, the second residence into 2 units, the boathouse into 1 unit, as well as construct 2 other structures that will match the architectural style of the property and have 8 additional units total. The goal here is to have a cottage-style community, which I believe perfectly fits in with the PLP district.
There's no yelling, no shouting out.
As can be seen in the site plan that you have, our client worked very carefully and diligently in conjunction with the planning board to come up with the plan that is now before you. Actually, from the street, the property will seem totally unchanged with the construction occurring behind the primary residence. The surrounding area, we also believe, is particularly suited for this type of designation. There are commercial properties on both sides of the property. Adjacent to the north is the Atria Assisted Living Facility, and adjacent to the south is a bed and breakfast, and even further south to that is a boatyard. Both of these properties have been designated PLP, and we're in the middle of both of those properties. They've all been designed to be consistent with the residential character of the community, and that's exactly what our goal here is to blend in flawlessly with the residential character of the community. This is also a senior citizen community, and we believe senior citizen housing is sorely needed in this town. Senior citizen housing generates a substantial amount of income from taxes, especially to the Bay Shore School District, without adding one single child to the school. We believe this is the highest and best use of the property. Actually, this application would result in the total number of senior units being much less than that of a senior citizen residence C type of district. And Dave can talk more of that. And again, our goal here is to preserve the historic nature of the property, the residential character, and try to achieve the highest and best use of the property. So with that said, I'd like to turn this over to our architect, Dave Bush.
Good evening, members of the board, chairman, community. On behalf of the property owners, my name is David Bush, B-U-S-C-H, registered architect with offices at 90 West Main Street in Bay Shore. As introduced, the application is for a change of zone to a planned landmark preservation district, a PLP, and a town board special permit. The existing property is depicted on Sheet 1. SK1, which is a site location plan. is comprised of two parcels. It's 63 and 65 South Ocean Avenue in Bay Shore. It's presently Residence AA zoned and currently improved with 3 structures occupied as residence and a boathouse. There's an existing improved bulkhead and boat slips along Watchung Creek. The subject property is on the east side of Ocean Avenue and is situated between 2 current PLP zone properties, which is reflected on SK2. You have the Atria to the north and the Ocean Bay house to the south. The requested change of zone on this property is for the PLP to preserve an existing architecturally significant shingle-styled house, which is circa 1903, and create an adaptive use as a senior living community with the addition of cottage-style dwellings. To reflect on the planned landmark preservation overlay district, legislative intent, section 68-47, to paraphrase, the PLP is designed to provide regulations and special conditions to perpetuate and use places, buildings, having a special character or special historic or aesthetic interest or value. More specifically, to summarize some of the points, the PLP is to promote economic and general welfare of Islip, to safeguard significant features and cultural heritage provided through physical evidence of the town's evolution, to foster beauty of the past, to recommend new uses of landmarks, to strengthen the economy of the town, and to protect the town tax revenues. That's a paraphrase of the 7 points of the PLP, which is proposed. In looking at the project and the existing site, I think it's important to reflect on the history of Bay Shore, and particularly Ocean Avenue. Bay Shore is a hamlet with a rich and storied past, which includes many historic residences, resort hotels, and properties. One of Bay Shore's most storied periods of time was in the late 19th century, when it became notable as a popular resort town because of its close proximity to Manhattan and Fire Island, which is directly across from the fabled Great South Bay. Long Island Railroad provided route and access to this hamlet and solidified the area's singular appeal as a hub of commerce, recreation, and community. During this period, the hamlet developed side streets. The side streets were developed to provide for affluent city dwellers looking to escape. They came out to the hotels and resorts, and as well established and constructed summertime and full-time residents. Bay Shore is actually synonymous with some of the historic resort hotels when we look at its history. These stately local spots are detailed in the Bay Shore Historical Society organization and Long Island Preservation Association and other records. Just to name a couple, the Cortlandt House in 1809, the Dominy House in 1861, and a relative to this property, the Prospect House circa 1870. There was the Linwood Hotel, which was right on South Clinton, and others that were also south of Main Street, the Shanley Hotel, the Clintonian, the Bay Shore Inn, just to name a few. The significance of the Prospect House was that it was located at the east side of South Ocean Avenue. It was in 1867, John M. Rogers came to Bay Shore from Sag Harbor and shortly after established the well-known Resort Hotel. It was a meeting place for the elite. They came for evening dances, entertainment, arts, and then a stay at the hotel. With its great popularity, the hotel at 53 South Ocean was expanded to include additions and rooms for 200 guests with cottages on the adjacent lands south to accommodate a total of 400 guests. These cottages took place south of 53 South Avenue, South Ocean, which is part of the property here subject 63 and 65. The Prospect Hotel, the Prospect House, as part of these grounds, coexisted with some of the same historic homes on Ocean Avenue that exist today. There's a prolific landscape panorama artist who is a Long Island resident who captured the Prospect House in a watercolor painting. His name was Edward Lang. As depicted in the panorama, the grounds of the Prospect House, which is reflected in your SK10 drawing, bottom left, depict the cottages which occurred at 63 and 65 South Ocean Avenue. This drawing reflects a hotel building, its grounds, its outbuildings, including a bowling alley, a library building, boat building yard, and cottages spread along Ocean Avenue, opposite of the existing residences on the west side. 63 South Ocean Avenue is a part of these grounds located on this side. There exists a 2.5-story shingle-style residence that was circa 1903 with a continuous front porch and a polygon-shaped sitting porch. That house fronts Ocean Avenue and is the residence that you see when you look in the drive of 63 South Ocean Avenue. The building has historical significance and complements other historical significant residents on Ocean Avenue. 65 South Ocean, which is the back part of the lot, was also part of the grounds. It has an existing outbuilding, which is actually a boathouse, which is recognized in the property of SIVO as historically significant and also circa 1903. We took a look at the existing site. We looked at the proximity where we see that 63 and 65 are located between two PLP existing properties. If we look at the existing site plan, which is on SK3, there are 3 existing structures, including 2 historically significant buildings, the shingle-style residence and the boathouse. As well, it shows the current drive configuration shown in a in a gray hatch with access to all buildings, the boat slips, and the boat slips on Watchor Creek. The proposed site plan, which is on SK4, reflects the 3 existing structures in a dark gray hatch, and then the 4 new cottage-style dwellings labeled D, E, F, and G in a light gray. The proposal here for this property is to improve the exterior detailing of the other 2 existing structures at the back, the middle house and boathouse, to align with the architectural details of the shingle-style historically significant residence that currently fronts Ocean Avenue. To complement this detailing, the new cottage-style residence will have matching shingle-style detail and small covered porches. The new cottages will be dispersed and clustered behind the main residence within the site. Each would maintain a sense of yard and have available common green space associated with the senior community. The primary residence would maintain its prominence and historical setting fronting Ocean Avenue. There would be no buildings placed forward of it. Everything would be behind it. As noted by Ray, the 3 existing structures would be improved to provide for 6 senior living units. The 4 new structures are designed to provide for 8 units, for a total of 14 senior living units. Parking is provided in compliance with town code for the senior units and dispersed without the site behind the primary residence to provide for 25 spaces. We would discuss with the town the opportunity of land banking to preserve more green space. The proposed site plan maintains the existing shingle-style residence fronting Ocean Avenue and the entry point, the drive entrance. It provides common activity space for senior living within, including walking paths, contemplative outdoor sitting space, a common pergola, and with sitting space and barbecue, and a picnic amenity that's waterside. Additionally, the plan considers common sitting porch and reading space for the senior residences of the property on the octagonal porch of the historic residence, fully incorporating it back into the program. On the other sheets, SK 5 and 6, we see the proposed new cottage-style plans and elevations. These are smaller independent structures, shingled, provided in single units and 1 clustered unit. There is no apartment building here. These are all independent structures clustered in a community of green space. The second drawing, SK6, actually gives you a color rendering to indicate the match of some of the shingle nature, the white trim, and asphalt shingle of the existing house. Again, the final style and detailing, we would continue to work with the planning department to achieve an appropriate appearance. On SK7, the converted unit plans, these are plan diagrams, simply plan diagrams to demonstrate how the 6 units, how the 3 existing buildings may provide for the units, as well to provide for the opportunity of the reading port to give back to the community, reading porch. SK8, depicts the existing shingle-style residence and the drive view. From Ocean Avenue, this is your view into the property. It's through a threshold of landscaping into a gravel drive. That point of drive access would be maintained with the current proposal, with the new units proposed behind the primary. This view and architecture of the existing shingle-style residence is preserved. We maintain the vegetation and hedging along Ocean Avenue and green space for the side yard, which is to the south of the primary porch. On SK9, there's some concept image which represent the essence of the grounds to be created with landscape features, community sitting, and contemplative space for the residents. Again, all of this screened from Ocean Avenue. SK10 is the historic map. That's a handout. This sheet depicts the original Prospect House and the property that occupied the site south of 53 Ocean Avenue, including 63 and 65 Ocean Avenue. Along with the artist's depiction by Edward Lang, it reflects the mixed use of the historic Ocean Avenue fabric. The Prospect House, its common grounds with cottages coexisting alongside single-family homes on the historic Ocean Avenue. Ocean Avenue as it exists today continues a Bayshore heritage as a mix of beautiful architecturally appointed residential homes and commercial uses. It has many historically significant homes from the mid-1800s through the turn of the century, an assisted living community, the Atria, bed and breakfast, private marinas, restaurant, and town marina access. This proposal is for the preservation through the PLP to preserve an existing structure, a historically significant structure along Ocean Avenue. It preserves the structure and rejuvenates a program of senior living. It creates a new and viable use and reintroduces cottage outbuildings clustered on the common grounds. It's an adaptive reuse, recognizing existing structures and preserving the cultural history of the community that was part of the Prospect House grounds. In summary, in closing, as a property between two PLP properties with a DEC letter of non-jurisdiction, buildings inventoried with the Division of Historic Preservation, New York Parks and Recreation Department, and the Preservation of Long Island. This proposal for a PLP adaptation rejuvenates the idea of the historic Prospect House with common grounds, activity space, and cottage occupancy, and preserves the original mixed architectural fabric of Ocean Avenue. Thank you. I'm available to address any questions.
Thank you. Anything further from the applicant? Okay, so we'll go to public comment. Mr. Brown?
Brother Philip Hurt? Certainly.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman and the board. 24 years ago, when we moved on to the block at 52, we heard all the rumors of what was going to happen, that there would be organ music and there would be incense and all crazy things going on from our house. We have been a good and faithful neighbor. And 24 years ago, I stood before a civic meeting endorsing Sterling Glen across the street because that which was there was pretty horrible to look at. It was a dilapidated piece of property. It couldn't look worse. So I was the only person who endorsed it. I don't necessarily endorse this. historically, you didn't have the crazy motorcycles, you didn't have the crazy trucks, you didn't have the crazy traffic on Ocean Avenue. That's very different now than it was then. To put in a senior community at this point, I think is very short-sighted. Besides thinking that Bay Shore has become tremendously overbuilt. The Gibson building that got the pizzeria is good, and the behemoth that they built over by the train station, there are just so many people in the world that want to live in Bay Shore. And I don't really understand why this would be the solution for anyone. So unless my point is it's a stepping stone that when you get tired of living there, you hop the fence and go to the assisted living place. Other than that, I can see no reason to live there. That's the way I feel. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Peter Zent. Peter Zent.
My name is Peter Zent. I live at 58 Ocean Avenue, and my kitchen in one room is once part of the Prospect House. Please maintain the designated historic district of Ocean Avenue, and which the street, as well as Holman Avenue, Shore Lane, and Maple Avenue are part of. This application has no consideration for myself and the neighbors. It is the first apartment complex turning it into another Clinton Avenue. I've lived here most of my life, and I remember Clinton Avenue family homes that are now 100% apartments. Please don't do this to our Ocean Avenue. The builder is Paul Annaboli. 63 is owned by Rodney Slope and Paul Alvarezzi. I hope I got it right now. They inherited the boatyard Seabourn Marine from Joe Barrazzo. Joe worked with the neighbors when he acquired the boatyard. Roddy and Paul have made it difficult for the neighbors with the boatyard, the bed and breakfast, and for over 2 years with 63 Ocean Avenue. I only have 3 minutes, so I don't have time to go into that difficult history. The site plans show, 138, God. The site plans show a parking lot in the middle of the property, if you look at it. That lot was built over 2 years ago without town approval. It is being used for current tenants, boats behind 63 Ocean Avenue and the bed and breakfast, as well as boatyard equipment. Now they want approval for that parking lot, but it's already been there. Just like they had an illegal parking lot before they got rid of it in the bed and breakfast. They request parking at 63 Ocean for 25 cars. The site plans show 38 beds in the 14 apartments. 38 beds, 38 sleeping people equals 38 cars. 25 cars does not equal 38 cars. The B&B had a tent wedding last fall. There were around 50 cars parked on Ocean Avenue. In the spring, the boatyard has to move cars onto Ocean Avenue because there's no room while they're working on the boats. Why trust these people? Building C in the back, which they're calling a boathouse, is really a garage. The site plans, garage has never been approved. They have it as a one-room apartment. So it's an illegal apartment already. The property, and it's next to the property line. Building C was flooded during Hurricane Sandy. That's the one that is the back boatyard. They want to take, it'll be done in a second. They want to take this under 2-acre historic district property and add tons of cars, add boats, and build apartments. To hell with this, with history, the neighborhood. They'll be damned with history. Let the owners and the builder and the town of Islip tax revenue take the money and run. Please don't do this to us.
Thank you.
Jeffrey Retaliata.
Jeff Retaliata.
Jeffrey Vitaliata.
Jeff Vitaliata, I live at 82 Shore Lane. I've lived in the house for 52 years. I appreciated Mr. Bush's travel backlog into history, which has absolutely nothing to do with the present day. Bay Shore is not looking for more housing. We've just built thousands of apartments in the Bay Shore Village, which will forever change our village, the village I moved into. There is already more than 1,000 new apartments planned and agreed to in Bay Shore, so that they're coming. We don't need more housing in Bay Shore. If you want to retain, preserve the history of Bay Shore, you're not doing it with this proposal. You're just using that as a pretense. The house is there, it's going to stay there, and it looks fine. To add another potentially 38 beds on that 2-acre parcel is absurd. All that does is hurt the neighbors and produce a profit for the developers who are already wealthy people. In fact, when they mentioned as a ruse that there were parcels to the south that were already downgraded, they were downgraded by some of the members of this LLC. So do you see the point I'm making here? This is a progressive movement by developers trying to make a profit for themselves without regards to the people who lived there for 50 years. I would expect, as a planning board, and people who supposed to have seen the site, have many of you seen the site? Have walked the grounds? Are you familiar with it? Are you familiar with the streets, the traffic during the summer, the parking during the summer, the noise during the summer? I think if you paid attention to any of those things and you were working on behalf of the town and the town residents who have been paying taxes and supporting the government in the town for all these years, you would do those things. And you would realize that this is a progressive move for a small number of people who are already wealthy to make more money at the expense of the neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you.
Clarence O'Connor. Clarence O'Connor.
Just want you to know, I own this piece of property for 20 years.
Sir, use the microphone.
Owned and lived on this piece of property for 20 years. I'm sick to my stomach just hearing this. I did a lot of work on this property to build it up. I want to puke right now. And that's God's honest truth. They're putting this through as a guise as a plant preservation overlay district, as per Town Code 68.477, directly taken from the Islip Town Code. Legislative intent, parts A through G, PPL legislative intent, subsection A, to promote education, culture, pleasure, and economic general welfare in the residents of the town of Islip. This project does not enhance the general welfare of the residents of Ocean Avenue in any way, shape, or form. Therefore, it does not qualify under this general intent. PPL legislative intent subsection B, to safeguard significant features of the town of Islip's historic, aesthetic, scenic, and cultural heritage, so that they may provide continuity through the physical evidence of the town's evolution and historic beauty. In no way does this do that in any way. Again, it does not qualify under this legislative intent. PPL legislative intent, subsection C, to foster civic pride in the legacy of achievements and beauty of the past. This is the absolute no way adding 14 apartments on top of the 600 plus apartments you've already put in Bay Shore make this a good project for our town. It only makes it worse. The legislative intent of a PPL is not being met. PPL legislative intent, subsection D, to encourage the most desirable use of the land and site design in the vicinity, and such a significant historic, aesthetic, scenic, and cultural features through the application and appropriate and compatible standards of development and such other techniques or policies as will protect and upgrade their character. This is residential property, not a blighted piece of property, but a beautiful turn-of-the-century residence that is not dilapidated or in disrepair. This project in no way upgrades the character or the value of this property. It only diminishes this, as it is a beautiful piece of property already. The compatible standard referred to would be the existing residential 2 single-family homes on the subject property, not a 14-apartment complex. Legislative intent not met. PPL legislative intent E, to examine the and recommend potential new and compatible uses of the landmarks where they are unused or underused. The property in question is neither unused or underused as a residentially zoned piece of property. Therefore, it certainly does not meet the town criteria for PPL. Legislative intent void and also on this account. PPL legislative intent, subsection F, to strengthen the economy of the town. With the 600-plus apartments already put in the town, these houses already pay $50,000 a year probably in property taxes. It's not adding anything to your coffers. PPL, my last point, PPL legislative intent, subsection G, to stabilize and improve the property values and thereby protect the town's tax revenues. I believe right now, most of the residents on Ocean Avenue are in agreement that if this project is approved, you will be reducing, not improving the values of the neighborhoods of the property. Again, legislative intent for PPL not met.
Thank you.
Tom McLam.
Board, gentlemen, ladies. Tom McLam, I'm a Public Works Project Supervisor.
Just use the microphone so they can hear you.
My background is Public Works Project Supervisor for a building and engineering for Huntington, 6-term planning board member out in the Hamptons. I have a 70-year family history on Ocean Avenue. Just the canal's a mess right now. I doubt you have DEC approval for even building this because, as I said, the boathouse is less than 25 feet from the dock. It's Judge Cohalan in February 1980 passed it in May of 1980. The boat slips are supposed to be 1 per 35 feet, up to 3. You got 11 slips back there behind that house, and you're right now your ratio is 1.75. So you have 24 slips, 24 parking spaces for the houses. Where are the 11 boats supposed to park? I mean, this board dropped the ball next door. You have it as PPL, yet it's a business. The boatyard has 21 slips behind it, that house. It's business. You don't even have it registered in your zoning map as business. There's 21 boats there. You have 14 parking spaces for the house. We, as taxpayers, we pay for the road. We can't even park on a road because you keep overdeveloping it. I mean, you have your own codes that you don't follow. You have people coming here building, and yet codes 68-48 paragraph F clearly states what the dock is. This board never looks at it. I don't know if you have site plan reviews, but you're overcrowding your street. I mean, it's kind of embarrassing that, this is the town that does this. I don't know where, if you want, I know because my father was on the board for 12 years. Next door, if you want to do due diligence and do just take a field trip, go over in the annex. You have pictures of 50s and 60s of the canal showing how many boats were behind each house. Pictures say 1,000 words. I mean, you just can't keep, I don't know where you're going to put all these cars. It's just a shame that this has gone this bad. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Robert Felt.
Paradise put up a parking lot. That's what you guys have to deal with. That's the nature of your business. I commiserate with you. Nobody wants to deal with Pave Paradise put up a parking lot. My name is Robert Felt, officer. Officer, my name is Robert Felt. I'm a retired federal law enforcement officer, 30 years. I'm here with my wife, who's a retired school administrator. I live at 64 Ocean Avenue, and I'm totally opposed to this project. I live right across the street from it. I've been living there since '98, never been in arrears with my taxes. I've spent hundreds of thousands of dollars improving my house. And I will begin with the presumption that no single family owner anywhere all of you, wants an apartment complex across the street from your house, okay? Nobody wants that. And nobody can tell me they would unless you own the parcel of land that's going to be rezoned for its best, highest value, as the architect said. So you realize the lottery. This guy already did it on the bed and breakfast and realized the lottery once. Do not allow him to hit the lottery again. Ocean Avenue is usually described by journalists as stately. One of the speakers tonight used the adjective stately, but it won't be if you guys keep allowing multi-apartment projects to dot the street. I should mention the last sale on the east side of Ocean Avenue was the Entenmann House, the old Entenmann House, the white one. It sold about a year and a half ago for a little less than $1 million. It sold in 2 weeks. Now, the history quickly. We took one for the team, all right, with the Banks estate. In 1998, I moved in, and shortly after, like my neighbor said, nobody wanted to see the dilapidation of the Banks estate. We agreed to rezone it, make it a senior assisted living, 90 units. Your tax roll went from $22,000 per annum to $202,000 per annum. That year, it was rezoned. That's a real windfall of tax revenue, okay? Then we took one for the team with the bed and breakfast. Donna Perricone, who admittedly has done a wonderful job as a Chamber of Commerce, the revitalization, wonderful. That was her pet project. Give me a bed and breakfast somewhere in Bayshore. That's across the street from my house. You rezone that. The taxes doubled there. You got another boost in your tax revenue, okay? Now, that was sold by the guy who's trying to sell this property. We don't want to take one for the team on this project. You don't need the apartments there. Like everybody said, there's hundreds of apartments going up. Nobody that's a reasonable working person can afford. It's going to be $4,000 a month rent, maybe $5,500 if you got a boat slip. Who knows, right? So we don't want to do it. You guys wouldn't want it done in your neighborhood, all right? The overdevelopment of this Land Preservation Act, landmark preservation, it flies in the face of the whole concept of historical preservation. It's like taking your great-grandpa's Model T, weighing it down with heavy-duty suspension, big tires, a scoop, and a turbocharger until the history of the car is lost to commercialization. That's what you guys are doing now on Ocean Avenue. And it's pretty nifty. The guy thinks he's going to wedge in, the architect wants to wedge in this last little single-family one. So you guys are going to go for it, right? Because, what the hell? The neighboring ones have already been rezoned, so take out that one in there. I'll finish in 22 seconds by saying this project will do nothing to alleviate the apartment shortage for anyone other than affluent tenants, downsizers who sell their homes, perhaps they're $1 million, and it can afford the $40,000 to $50,000 a year that the rent's going to be at these places. These are not going to be cheap apartments. Undoubtedly, I see this project as unmitigated greed on the seller's part, and surprisingly, a small, intrusive, unneighborly pet project or trial balloon project on the builder's part, with a measure of greed with him as well. I can't help but see this project as a tax grab, if you go along with it, pure and simple, and a dash of payback for the other very large, sensible projects the builder has realized in Islip Town to date. I'm guessing the property tax revenue will at least double if you approve this zoning. Amongst all the large-scale apartment
I'm just going to
development.
ask you to wrap up if you can.
I got it. All I have to say is that you guys are going to appear to treat Bayshore as a real cash cow if you go for this greedy little project that these have. And you might as well change the maps, the names on the maps, to Payshore. That's how I'm going to feel about this. All right?
Thank you.
Magdalena Felt? Magdalena Felt?
I know you all support the speakers, so I'm going to ask in between if you would hold off on the applause so we can get through the list of speakers that we have so everybody can be heard this evening. Thank you.
Okay, good evening. My name is Magdalena, Maggie Felt. Robert is my husband, and I live at 64 Ocean Avenue, directly across from the proposed zoning change and senior housing. First, I'd like to preface by saying, the old adage, you can't fight City Hall. I'm here to let you know that I want to work with City Hall. I don't want to fight with City Hall. Just a little history. I want to bring Mr. Bush's history up to our current, where we are today, 2023. As my husband stated, we've been residents on Ocean Avenue since May 2018, which is 25 and a half years. Since that time, I had a small child, I raised my child. We have witnessed a renaissance in Bayshore. Main Street has morphed into the Mecca for dining and drinking, with more than our share of restaurants and bars. There has been an increase in popularity of tourists, vacationers, weekenders, and day trippers passing through Bayshore on their way to Fire Island, the ferries, dinner at one of the many restaurants, or just plain bar hoppers looking for a good time. While these improvements have revived a town that was once blighted, we all agree, with abandoned businesses and homelessness, I ask you all today, when is enough enough? We are very proud of our town, all the wonderful things it has to offer. We have worked hard for our humble homes. We pay our taxes and deserve a town that will listen, a town hall board that would listen to our concerns seriously and respectfully. Since moving to Ocean Avenue, I have witnessed the changes of a quaint neighborhood street with its eclectic homes, a dock with a scenic view of the Great South Bay, where children rode bicycles or skateboards, and people of all ages were seen strolling along, enjoying the charm and beauty of the residential neighborhood and street, to what was now become a commercial street, serving several businesses. Captain Bill's, when we moved there, was a nice upscale business restaurant, which initially catered to local businesses and families. Currently, in addition to their restaurant, they have expanded to include 2 catering halls, with large events such as weddings on an ongoing basis, weekly. The scope of their business requires delivery trucks on a daily basis, racing down our street along with party buses, limousines, and traffic backing up the street. I ask you to do the math, all of you. On a Saturday night, 2 weddings, 100 guests per wedding, at each wedding, and a fully booked restaurant. How many cars would you estimate driving down Ocean Avenue? We've also witnessed the rezoning of a historical home, which was converted to an assisted living. This facility requires many outside deliveries in order to run its business. These trucks come barreling down Ocean Avenue, backing up traffic. The employees don't even have enough parking to accommodate their employees. They're parking on the street in front of our homes, making our driveway access tenuous and dangerous. We've experienced a changing of zoning with the bed and breakfast perpendicular to my home, which also provides catered events, weddings, and everything. Again, do the math. 100 people at a wedding, 100 cars. They don't have the parking. They're parking on the street. I want to close. I know I'm past my time, so I just want you to really respectfully consider our needs. The infrastructure of the streets in Bayshore has not improved. We have parking signs, no parking up and down Ocean Avenue. I challenge every single one of you at any given time, take a drive on Ocean Avenue and you see cars directly parked under those signs. With impunity. There is no consequences of speeding cars, illegally parked cars. They blow through the stop sign right where a school bus stop is. I have never seen a policeman or a police car or anybody ticketed. In closing, I just want to add that tonight I witnessed here in this meeting 2 other businesses for rezoning. The one on North Clinton Avenue for childcare, which is also going to impact traffic because the buses are going to be stopping on Clinton Avenue. Do an assessment of your own infrastructure. And Nikki's on the Bay. You know how much traffic they use Ocean Avenue to go down to Nicky's on the Bay? So what I'm asking is that you take a look at what urbanization has done to Bay Shore. And if you want Queens, you're on the right track, because the beauty and everything of Bay Shore has been lost. And I end with that. I'm hoping that you will be respectful of the residents in Bay Shore who've worked through the blight and everything else. Thank you.
Thank you.
Rich Caputi? Rich Caputi?
Put that together, so I figured I'd have that. I'm Richard Caputi. I live at 31 Ocean Avenue, and I tried to count how many times the presenter said historic, but I stopped at 47. I want to let you know, this room is filled with people that live in those historic homes. And, they spend about 20 minutes or so explaining the history of Bay Shore and everything else, but all they really had to say is turn this single-family residence into a 14-unit complex. And that I'm very much against. I really only have a couple of points. The oversaturation, which has been mentioned, the apartments in the immediate area, the oversaturation of the commercial businesses on Ocean Avenue, Seabourn, the Atria, Captain Bill's, the bed and breakfast, and a variety of businesses to the north end of Ocean. There are close to 1,000 new apartments within walking distance, they're either under construction or just recently completed, within walking distance of Ocean Avenue. That's going to result in several thousand new residents. What's the impact going to be from these new residents? There's going to be an overburden to our fire department, to our EMS, to our schools, to our hospitals, and on and on. We really have to pay attention to what that means. The signs that are here, the Historic Bay District, it's been mentioned. As you all along Gibson Road there, you'll see the signs as you head into the south area. That the historic, it's the Historic Bay area. There's the historic billboard sign that's clearly designates the Historic Bay area, by gazebo with the band shell, and another one outside the Historical Society's headquarters, which is located in the designated Historic Bay District. And as a result of that history, the businesses that are setting up on Main Street, they're actually incorporating some of that with the names of their restaurants, the Linwood, King's Chop House, that's Dr. King. I believe some of you may have sit on the Economic Development Committee as well, so I want to make it clear. For me, this is not an economic development objection. I was the past president of an organization with more than 1,000 members, and just over a year ago, I submitted a letter to this town on behalf of my organization in support of the Toro Law conversion to apartments because of where it was situated on a 4-lane highway in a commercial district. And I'm not against economic development, but it needs to serve the needs of the community, and it can't have a negative impact on the residents of that community. There were a lot of other points that I wanted to make, but I really just want to say in closing, I just implore the board to reevaluate this development and the negative impact this rezoning is going to have on the residents on Ocean Avenue and surrounding areas. Please choose to support the taxpaying residents of the area instead of granting approval for an income-producing property for a developer that doesn't even live in the area. Thank you.
Thank you.
Lynn Casper?
Live at 24 Ocean Avenue. It's one of the historic houses. It was the lighthouse keeper's house. I've tried to maintain the historic properties of the house, the features. It was nice to hear that the architect was stating stuff that was history of this area, which was great that he researched that. And we do need senior housing in the town of Islip, but not on Ocean Avenue. The owner of 25 Ocean Avenue, who is not here, has plans of also doing the same project. And as somebody who lives directly across from that driveway, I would have headlights in my house every day, in and out, delivery trucks, all that. Construction, it would be horrible. And for the people down the block from me, they're also going to be having headlights in the windows, all the traffic. It's not in our best interest to have a community being built there. We need it, but we don't need it on Ocean Avenue. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, the next speaker we have is Kathleen Allen Henley, who had to leave, and there's another speaker in her place.
Nope.
No, I guess she left with Kathleen. Next one we have is Kay Kozak. Kozak.
Good evening. My name is Ken Kozak. I live at 38 Ocean Avenue for close to 45 years now. And what puzzled me just a few years ago was the parking meters in Bay Shore, and that's the only hamlet in Islip that has meters everywhere, which to me is shocking. But the real thing I've noticed is that Bay Shore has become Elmhurst, Queens. There are so many structures, massive structures. I call some of them like Toro, 11 Maple, which has a great pizzeria below. But everywhere you look in Bay Shore, there's construction of large dwellings with high rents. And I'm just curious why no other towns are. Oh, can't hear me? I'm curious why no other towns in Islip have this massive construction. It's not in West Islip, where I think our supervisor lives. And Ocean Avenue, where I live, when we first moved in, you could actually park your car in the street. You could get out of your driveway without someone trying to pass you as you're getting out and flipping you the bird. Cars being hit. And we have, the only person I know who's gotten a ticket on Ocean Avenue for the limited parking was a neighbor that lived on Ocean Avenue. There are cars constantly parked without stickers. There's not that you want to get a ticket, but Ocean Avenue has become Queens Boulevard at times. And I just don't understand why Bay Shore is again the designated almost armpit of the town of Islip for meters, for the construction of massive facilities that may not even be filled. We've had people on 11 Maple that moved out because of the rent. It's not full. It's perplexing that that Ocean Avenue is losing its historic significance. And the traffic, the cars, I've never seen a person ticketed running stop signs, either at Linden, south of us, or north. And I don't advocate speed bumps, but they're at Maple. You know, when cars buzz by, is there any sense that enough is enough on Ocean Avenue? Thank you.
Thank you. Those are all the cards I have. Did anybody else come in and wish to be heard? Just fill out a card afterwards, state your name for the record.
Hi, my name is Christine Mahoney. I live at 66 Ocean. I'm not as prepared as my neighbors because I really just wanted to come listen. We're new to Bay Shore. We've only been there for 5 years. Historically, I live in the home. Any Yankee fans? I live in the home that was built by Tammany Hall gangster, Mr. Farrell. And my wife and I have spent a lot of time, blood, money, sweat, and tears rebuilding and refurbishing that home. So if you have gone to this one, look across the street, 66, that's me. I have a 5-year-old and a 7-year-old. They are at that bus stop. They get zoomed by with the trucks. Thank God we have Bay Avenue in the back. So that's where they ride their bikes. That's where they ride their scooters and all those things. But to add 38 beds, 25 cars, when I heard that, I was like, oh my God, I have a family party. And, I have a large family, and we take up my whole driveway and out in front. I can't imagine 14 homes, 38 beds. They're all grandparents. They all have birthdays. Everybody comes to visit them. Where are those cars going? Where are those people going? We live across from the bed and breakfast. When they have a party, we have to close our windows. The way the home was built so that you open the windows in the front and the back so you get a nice breeze off the water. When the B&B has a party, we can't do that. So I just want to say, as a new Bay Shore resident, Please don't do this. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to be heard on the application? Yes, just come on up.
Good evening. My name's Mary Rita Zent, born and raised in Bay Shore, 75 years old, lived on Ocean Avenue since 1952. I was thinking today as we were speaking, anytime you want to come and sit on our front porch, come and sit. You'll hear the noise, the dust, everything that goes up and down that road. 3-4 years ago, 6 years ago, I had a problem with my leg. I had to sit on the front porch and I said to my brother Peter, I said, this place is so noisy. And when you think about it, when you think of all the people going down to the businesses at the end of the street, all the restaurants, there's too much of everything. We have to make life simple. We don't need people that are working for the town making money. You call certain people, no one shows up. You call Steve Flatteran, he doesn't show up. You call Johnny Cochran, he doesn't show up. You know, who's? It's like this country. Who's running the place? And it breaks my heart. So I don't know what you're going to do, but you better do something because I'm not going to be here. Too long.
Thank you. Anyone else wish to be heard? Come on up, sir. Just fill out a card afterwards.
Hi, my name is Richard Christie. I live at 103 Ocean Avenue in Bay Shore. I'm also a commissioner in the Bay Shore Fire Department. And I just want this board to realize something. We have to raise taxes because of the Domini building because we don't have the trucks big enough to take care of that. You're adding buildings all over this town that these people don't realize yet. They're going to get a tax bill from the fire department because you're letting buildings being built that we can't sufficiently, God forbid somebody dies. Are you guys coming to the funeral? You guys going to take care of this? You don't realize what you're doing. You're up here, you're voting things, oh yeah, give it to him, give it to him. At the end of the day, you guys have to start paying attention to what you're doing because the taxes are going to go up. Because we have to cover what you're building. You have no clues to what you're doing. Thank you.
Anyone else wish to be heard on the application? Not seeing anyone, I'm going to turn to Mr. Colgan for a report.
There we go. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This application proposes to construct 4 additional cottage-style buildings, repurposed 2 existing homes, and an existing boathouse in order to use the property for 14 senior citizen apartments. Prior to this, the property had been the subject of a cluster subdivision in 2003. The current proposal is to add the Landmark Preservation District as an overlay on the property, which could permit the proposed use. The intent of the PLP is to protect, enhance, and use buildings, structures, and other objects having a special character or special historical or aesthetic interest or value. If this application is granted, the applicant could receive permission from the town board to alter the setbacks of the underlying residence AA zone and allow the property to be used for senior apartments while ceding to the planning board control over the external appearances of the buildings and the overall site. Town records indicate that the front house had been constructed back in 1917 and has been inventoried by the town for having historical and architectural importance. The assisted living facility to the north and the bed and breakfast to the south both received PLP designations based on the age and architectural significance of the original structures involved. This is a unique housing concept that is not necessarily prominent in the town or on Long Island and could potentially diversify the housing stock for seniors if it is approved. Given the proximity of downtown Bay Shore, this might be an appropriate use and density for this location. The rear of the property is in an AE5 flood zone. The plan submitted show that only the boathouse is within this flood zone area. The applicant has submitted an appraisal that indicates the conversion of the boathouse would be compliant with FEMA flood zone requirements. A wetlands and watercourse permit and New York State DEC permit may be required for any new marine structures or a modification to any existing marine structures or bulkheads in the rear. The conceptual site plan shows 40% overall landscaping and shows that it is compliant with minimum parking requirements. The variances for side yard setbacks will be needed from the town board for the new structures as well as for the conversion of the boathouse. Lastly, the conceptual building elevations appear complementary to the older house, although those could be reviewed in the context of the PLP and its meaning. The staff recommends that the board reserve decision tonight in order to review the correspondence submitted to the board, as well as review the public comments that we've heard this evening.
Thank you. Questions from Mr. Brown?
For the applicant. Yeah, Mr. Bush, I'm looking at the site plan that you gave us, and I'm looking at, let's see. With the exception of two of the buildings, I'm looking at the setbacks at 5 foot. So what type of variance, Sean? What is the setbacks to code on?
I'll get that for you in a second.
I'm going to follow up as soon as he follows that.
So in the residence AA district, the minimum side yard setback for a dwelling would be 18 feet with each side yard, the total 36 feet altogether. Other permitted buildings, which none of these would be, they'd be reliant on the PLP designation, would otherwise need 25 or 50 feet, depending on whether or not it's accessory building. So this one's a little more nuanced in the sense that they're asking the board to allow these setbacks that don't otherwise comply with the residence AA district. It would be up to the board to determine what the appropriate setback would be.
All right, so Mr. Bush, can you speak to as to why we should allow 5 foot setback on all these buildings?
Yes, appreciate the question, and Sean, I agree, quick research that AA is 18 feet side yard. The existing site has the boathouse, which is an existing building, has a side yard of approximately 2.8 feet from the property line. Right, that's at the rear east side of the property. The existing residence to the front has a setback of approximately 16.9 feet. So those two structures, pre-existing are not in compliance with the required zoning setback. We'd certainly work with the town and the planning department as we review program and elevations to configure site options that were more viable in terms of setback. The part of the other reason for the proposed setback is with the landscaping densities which exist along the property lines and the uses, the PLP. It's not immediately adjacent to a single-family residence. So this alternate look at the the setback is typically a viable line to review.
All right, and Sean, is the assisted living, is that considered residential property?
The code has changed, and I believe it would be considered residential.
As residential?
I believe so.
All right, so that would be residential on the one side. So that's even more of a variance that we're looking for. So that's just something that I would like to take a hard look at, the variances with the setbacks on this property.
Mr. Bush, just to Mr. Brown's question, I mean, the boathouse would be an accessory use, not the same as a living arrangement. So
Well, as
that,
part of the proposal, it is to convert that to a,
no, I'm aware that I'm saying that for the purpose of a comparison,
okay.
I would grant you that the front is 16 feet.
Mhm.
The one that's even closer to the property line is not currently CO'd as a living.
Correct.
So which from to Mr. Brown's point, you're asking for from, instead of 16 point, whatever is granted on the property, to go down to 5 feet.
Correct. In two locations, yes.
And your justification for that again was from 16 down to 5?
Just site proximities, maintaining green space in the interior and surrounding, the PLPs which are next door, not single-family homes.
There are further questions from the board before I ask mine? I guess I'll go to my questions. Oh, Ms. Cruz, go ahead.
I think one of my, kind of my comments and my concerns is really the additional 1, 2, 3, of the other 4 buildings that you're proposing on this lot. Plus, you know, who, the boat slips, who will have access to those boat slips? Is it those residents only? So my main concern are those 4 additional structures that you're already adding to this really, really busy street. So I don't know if there's something that can be done or be reviewed as far as those extra structures.
I'm sorry for are we talking about the boat slips? So, right, so the 4 additional buildings are comprised within the total of the 14 senior living units, right? And those 14 senior units are provided with the 1.75 parking per dwelling unit for the senior apartment. And the plan demonstrates compliance with that parking. Relative to the boat slips, I would have to default to the owner and have a discussion of the intent for the use of the boat slips for ownership within the senior community.
Anything further, Ms. Cruz? Can I ask a question, something that I just want to clarify? How many beds, I've been hearing 38 beds, how many beds total are proposed between all of the structures?
I sincerely would have to look at the plans. I'm not going to disagree that there may be 38 beds. The proposal is for primarily 2-bedroom units. So I'm not sure how the count of 38 comes up. But if we took 14 units at 2 beds, that's actually 28 units.
And how many parking spots are you proposing?
24. I'm sorry, 25. 25.
29 on the site plan. There's 29 if you count the handicap slips on the site plan.
I guess my question is, are you suggesting that the number of parking spots you're providing is what is needed for 38 beds?
Again, I'd want to, let's check the 38 beds. If I count the units, 14 units.
Right.
13 of them are proposed as 2-bedroom. That's 26 beds. The boathouse is proposed as a single bed. That's 27 beds, actually.
27 beds total?
27 beds total. The parking that's provided is 25.
And there's currently a parking lot that's on that property now.
Okay, so
whether or not it's approved.
What we would look.
First? My question is, what is that parking lot currently used for? And where does those people who are parking there now, where do they go?
So that on the existing site plan, which is sheet SK3, that gray hatch represents, I'll say, the existing gravelled area. That existing gravelled area, I can't speak to how it's used. I don't own and operate the current property, but at a look, what you can fit in there, you can fit approximately 30 spaces on the area of that gray hatch.
I guess my question is, and maybe not answered this evening, but you can get back to us on when you come back to this board, is what is it being used for now? Where do those cars go if it's being further developed in that spot, whether it's for a new unit or a new structure or parking spaces? You're already accounting for those parking spaces with the new structures being built. So what is the current boat go? Whether it's for boat slips, whether it's for the bed and breakfast next door, what are they being used for?
So with this proposal of the Ocean Avenue Commons, there is no proposal of an overflow parking.
That's exactly my point. I guess my question is, what is it being used for now? And where do those people go who are parking there now?
Okay.
That's my question. My other question for you, and you could just check the record on how I speak generally about new apartments in Bay Shore. I think where we should be is at a standstill to see what the apartments coming online, what that does to the infrastructure in downtown Bay Shore. I'm not saying that I'm opposed to new units coming online. I'm saying let's let what comes online first and see what it does to the impact of downtown Bay Shore before we even consider building any further apartments, senior living, or any type. Can I ask you, please, can I ask you not to, no applause? I would like your opinion when you come back before us, what your opinion is in terms of how many units there are that have been approved that are not online yet, and what impact that has on Bay Shore, the roadways, and how this project would fit into that. I mean, that's a concern that I've expressed at every meeting, probably going back for a while now in terms of new construction of apartments in Bay Shore. Let's see what the current number that have been approved is going to do to the infrastructure. And I don't think a lot of people who bring applications here speak to that. So as part of when you come back, how does that impact the roadways?
I'll do a little homework. Yep.
And then, and then my last thing is, and this rings true, we had an application on South Saxon Avenue for an assisted living, and the one comparison they kept drawing for us, I voted against that project, was Ocean Avenue, and what was built there, and the fact that there's commercial properties at the end of the street and throughout the street. And what I've said about it is on the record. You can go look at the record, but I think there's still a lot of residential houses along Ocean Avenue. And to continue the things that are already approved, I didn't vote on any of those that were approved on Ocean Avenue, but those that were approved are already there. There's nothing I can do to change that. But adding another commercial property to that, or an apartment complex, if you don't want to call it commercial, different type of housing project, what does that do to the impact of people who live there, who have families? You heard one who has kids there that have to ride the bikes in the back. What does that do adding? Again, there's already a lot of cars and trucks going up and down the street, but now we're proposing adding 25 spots, at least 25 new people driving in and out after having friends over and the like. What does that do? So what I'd like to see is talk about the impact. We can all agree that there's a need for senior housing, the best we can do for seniors. The question for me is, where is the appropriate location for it? Where do we put it that fits appropriately? And if you're going to suggest that this is the location, I'm not saying it's not, but I need to understand from you what that impact is to all the neighbors that live on that block. And that's what I would like to see. I'd like to see, again, if I can ask, we can talk about, again, the impact. So we're going to come back, we're going to submit some in writing, what this does to the residents on that street. And I'm talking about the residents, I'm about the residential neighbors on that street, the impact of the additional cars, the new apartments coming online, what that does to the impact of the downtown Bay Shore area. So those are some of the things I would like to see. And then also, I mean, Mr. Brown spoke about the side lots, but again, if we start creating exceptions for the side lot, the buffers there, what differentiates your property from others that may want to come and be on the other side of the PLP when they seek approval for the same. Those are the points that I just wanted to raise on the record and concerns that I would have with the project. Are there further questions from the board? Is there anything further like the applicant would like to add?
We thank everybody for the time this evening and the commentary from the community. We look to continue the dialogue regarding, working with the town and the community in terms of resolution. With regard to parking, we are involved in obviously other projects within Bay Shore, the Hamlet of Bay Shore, town of Islip, that are apartment projects that deal with parking. Historically, there have been relaxations on the parking. In this project in particular, there is no relaxation requested. We are meeting the requirement of the senior apartments. With on-site parking, not street-side parking. Regarding the comment of that Rich had made from the Bay Shore Fire Department, who I recognize, we did have overlap. We met with the town of Islip Fire Marshal regarding the plan. We reviewed street widths and truck access to the property. There certainly is no formal approval until a formal application is submitted, but we did react to his commentary and adjust the plan. And I'll say we have his recognition of a viable project. As well, different than what Rich had spoken about, these are all two-story, maximum dwelling units. There are no substantial building structures, multifamily units, et cetera. There's immediate egress from all of the apartments as well, ground floor, second floor, things like that for the seniors. So again, thank you for the time. Look forward to communication forward.
Thank you. Is there a motion? Mr. Brown.
Mr. Chairman, I'm going to make a motion to close the public hearing and reserve decision.
It's a motion by Mr. Brown to close the public hearing and reserve decision. Is there a second? Second by Ms. Cruz. All in favor? Opposed, abstentions were reserved. Thank you.
Thank you.
We're just going to go off the record for 1 minute so everybody heads out, and then we'll go back on the record. Thank you. Can I ask just everyone to please just take the conversations to the hallway? We have several other applications this evening that need to be heard. Wendy, can I ask you just to bring them out, just so we can start the next hearings?
Yeah, Tanner's got to get his 2 cents. I don't know, you know? What is the next one?
All right, we're ready to go back on the record.
Make a motion to put 7 through 10 together.
Item 7, site plan modification decision item, Stacy Giaquinto, Lincoln Realty Development, SP 2021-063, east side of Lincoln Avenue, 80 feet south of Robert Street, Holbrook, 0 Lincoln Avenue. Applicant requests landscaping and parking relaxations in connection with the construction of 2 one-story warehouse office buildings. Good evening.
Good evening, Chairman, members of the board. Billy Germano of Germano and Cahill, 4250 Veterans Highway, Holbrook, New York. We first held a public hearing on this matter on February 8th, 2023. Following public comment, there was the decision was reserved so that we could meet with planning staff and go through the project, which we did. We met on March 23rd with Planning Commissioner, Chief Engineer, and staff to discuss the modifications. I'll first say that we've been provided with a copy of the proposed conditions, and we have no objection to those conditions. The project was modified to remove the T-turnarounds, increase the overall landscaping, modify the parking to remove stalls, and add land bank stalls on the perimeter of the building. And we also land bank parking on the interior of the lot to show more green space. So those changes were made following those meetings with staff, and we think this now is a very good project.
Thank you, Mr. Germano. I'm going to turn to Mr. Gonzalez for a staff report. We'll come back if we have any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The application had its public hearing on February 8th. Decision was reserved to gather more public comment and discuss plan revisions with the applicant. As Mr. Germano stated, since that hearing, several meetings with the applicant team have been held and several changes have been made to the site plan to address the comments at the public hearing. The emergency vehicle turnarounds at the 3 existing dead-end streets have been eliminated from the proposal. Instead, a 50-foot dedication to the town of Islip will be provided, and no disturbance of that area is proposed. Adjacent to that area, the next 50 feet is to be a conservation easement on the subject property, preserving the natural area in perpetuity. That will be recorded against the property and accepted by the town board. The 25 feet in front of that will provide the full buffer treatment, standard sawtooth pattern, double row of evergreens, single row of deciduous trees, and the 6-foot-high chain link with stockade buffer fence. As Mr. Germano stated, other changes, just as a brief summary, include the reduction of drive aisles width on the perimeter of the site, reduction of parking stalls on the property, and addition of land bank parking on the interior of the site, as well as the perimeter. Conditions have been drafted which stipulate refuse pickup times on site so as not to potentially create a noise disturbance at early or late times in the day. The prohibition of vehicle idling along the perimeter of the property, on-site signage at ingress-egress points to direct trucks from not using Robert Street, which is to the north, and driving through residential areas to the east, and further solidifying no access from this property to the 3 residential streets at the rear, which is being dedicated to the town, so they wouldn't be able to anyway, but is being further cemented in the conditions. So this proposal is in line with the zoning on the property and provides ample mitigation to reduce impacts to the surrounding area. Based on the above, staff recommends the board grant the application subject to the attached conditions.
Thank you. Any questions from the board? Anything further from the applicant?
Nothing further.
Is there a motion? Ms. Cruz, thank you.
I'll make a motion to grant the application subject to the attached conditions.
It's a motion by Ms. Cruz to grant the application subject to the attached conditions. Is there a second? Second by Mr. Matamore. All in favor? Opposed? Abstentions? The application is granted. Thank you. Corey Elbaum, Vice President, SP 2022-0540, Rajon Road, Bayport. Applicant requests permission to leave a chain link fence in the front yard. Is the applicant here? Do not see the applicant. Is that yours, Tanner? That says V's on there.
Yeah.
Whose is it?
Sean,
Sean.
is that, I wasn't sure who added that one.
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This application proposes to leave an existing chain link fence along the Sunrise Highway Service Road. Previously, the subject property was the subject of a change of zone, which authorized the property to be used as a warehouse. The covenants on the property prohibited the chain link fencing in the front yard. However, they authorized the planning board to modify this requirement. The chain link fencing has been in place along the service road for many years and is surrounded by mature vegetation. Replacing the fence would disrupt some of this vegetation and would not appreciably improve the aesthetics of this portion of the property. The subject area is also not a focal point of Sunrise Highway, nor is it an entrance to the property. Based on the foregoing, the staff would recommend that the board authorize the chain link fence to remain.
Any questions for Mr. Colgan? Not seeing any. Is there a motion? Mr. Brown?
Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to grant the application based on Mr. Colden's staff report.
It's a motion to grant. Is there a second? Sent by Mr. Frugieri. All in favor? Opposed? Abstentions? The application is granted. Jetson Realty Corp., PB 2021-024, west side of MJ Boulevard, 1,450 feet north of Suffolk Avenue, County Route 100, Brentwood, 70 MJ Boulevard. Applicant requests a planning board special permit for the outside parking of unattached box trailers pursuant to 68-340.1P. Site plan modifications are also requested as part of the application. Good evening.
Good evening. Allison Lapointe with the firm Sir Tillman Bowen Adler Hyman with offices at 100 Motor Parkway, Hopog, New York. And I am here for 70 MJ Boulevard. So some of this presentation may sound a little familiar as a lot of the data remains the same.
You can feel free to skip the repetitive
I
stuff.
I appreciate your indulgence. We do recognize that the last time we were before this board was in 2021. I also recognize it has been a lengthy evening, so I will try to breeze over parts that I have already bored you to death on, and then we can move to more substantive things. So, brief history. Like I said, we were last before this board for a public hearing on June 22nd, 2021. And I'm sorry, our application went in on June 22nd, 2021. We had a public hearing on September 9th, 2021. Decision was reserved so we could go back to the drawing board and make some adjustments. We have spent the last 2 years actively working with the planning department to make significant changes to this application. As the last application, again, was presented, we'll try to go as quickly as possible. With me, I do have Tom Walsh, the architect, as well as Jacob Levi, Jason Lavey, and David Cohen of Plaster Run. I have submitted to you photographs of 11 properties along MJ Boulevard taken on August 15, 2023, showing current conditions, 7 Google Street View images of 7 properties with accompanying FARs noted, Board of Appeals variance approval for 110 MJ Boulevard dated April 24th, 2021, Google Earth image depicting MJ Boulevard corridor, and an August 3, 2023 alternative plan layout. I know that is not the one that you have reviewed, but based on last comment from staff, which I believe came from your work session, we made a number of possible changes. We know there was some comments regarding whether or not we would be open to land banking parking stalls. This shows parking stalls land banked along MJ Boulevard. It also increases the setback between MJ Boulevard and the parking stalls from 8 feet to 16 feet. This would allow accommodation for greater plantings and screening. The parking request from the has gone from 200. The parking request is still at 158, where 215 is required. That is now only a 27% relaxation, and the landscaping on this plan is now 10.54% total, with 55.17 in the front yard. The subject, we recognize that the proposal before you is a larger addition, and we appreciate that there may be concerns from the board. But the reason we're coming in with this is after 2 years of going through and reconfiguring the site and eliminating any superfluous space, this was the smallest addition my clients could bring forth that would allow them to continue to do business here in the town of Islip. They really do like having this place as their home. They have operated here for 25 years. They'd like it to be another 25 or 50 years. Plaster Run is a 41-year-old company owned and operated out of 70 MJ Boulevard. They received IDA approval in 2017 for a substantial investment and have 5 years left on their IDA. They really want to be here in Islip. This is where they want to function. The proposed addition and reconfiguration will ensure that they can continue at this location. Their production is the production of paper goods, plates, napkins, toilet tissues out of raw materials, which are then sold in large lots, repackaged into smaller lots elsewhere, and then distributed to end users. This production and distribution from production to the end user all takes place in the tri-state area. Currently, they employ 137 employees who work on 3 shifts. There are never more than 50 employees working at any one time. There are a total of 8 office employees. Paper production is a pennies business. These are not items where you're making massive profits when you're making the exchange. And because it's a pennies business, volume is key to survival. There are 2 factors impacting them that require them to bring an addition this size. One is the constant competition with cheaper labor overseas. We recognize that everyone feels that impact, but the impact has actually been heightened with the change in supply chains since the pandemic and the post-pandemic. We are no longer able to rely upon our deliveries, whether that be what we order from Amazon for ourselves or when you're making larger orders. So what's happening is either deliveries are not appearing and you're reordering and then double deliveries are appearing, or in an attempt to make sure that production never shuts down, you have to increase the volume of your order, because if we do not have the raw materials present, production shuts down, which means people are out of work. So those are the 2 factors that have us coming in for the relief today. The current property was originally constructed in 1965 and got approved for a 61,000 square foot addition in 1968. The current FAR is 36.6. The code at the time of construction, industrial zones had a 60% FAR. So with that in mind, when this entire corridor was developed, they were developing with the understanding that down the road they can expand and their locations of their buildings were placed as such, thinking that down the road they could expand to 60% FAR. That number was drastically cut back at later dates. So again, if we are not able to move forward with this plan, my clients unfortunately would have to seriously consider transitioning their business. The locations they have had to start looking at for transitioning their business would likely be out of state. One of their larger clients is in Pennsylvania, where they could build to suit. Again, they do not want to do this. They have had very excellent longevity with their employees. They do not have a ton of turnover, and they do not want to leave their neighborhood. They're looking to invest another $4.5 million into this business to ensure that it contains that longevity so they can stay here. As I described before, and I will go quickly about what the MJ corridor looks like.
Can I suggest you let Ms. Wozniak do her report? Then if you want to add something, then we'll go to the board questions.
Sure.
You may be happy with her report. Ms. Wozniak.
Well, then I'll stop talking.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Since the last public hearing, the applicant revised the plan to better screen the unattached box trailers by using the building addition to screen the trucks. The existing curb cut is to remain at the direction of engineering in order to ensure safe truck movements in and out of the site. The parking relaxation is 25%. However, the applicant has stated most of the building will be used as warehouse space, and the site has adequate parking to accommodate the addition. A 50% overall landscaping relaxation is required. It is also important to note that the addition will trigger the requirement for an FAR relaxation from the ZBA of 47% instead of the permitted 35%. The revised plan addresses the major concern of trailer screening, and proposed conditions require screen plantings to be provided along MJ. There are some concerns given the proximity of the building to the residential properties. However, the addition is proposed to be decorative in nature, and the inset of the loading docks make good use of the building to provide sound attenuation, along with screen plantings to be provided along the street frontage. Based on this, planning recommends the board grant the application subject to the attached conditions.
Would you like to add anything further?
No, there was some really good stuff in there, but I'm not going to share it with you now. Thank you very much. Feel free to interrupt me often.
Yes, we have a question for Mr. Brown.
Did you,
Certainly.
your client or yourself agree to the covenants and restrictions?
Yes, we reviewed them and had spoken to Ms. Wozniak, and we are comfortably with the restrictions on the property.
Chairman,
yes.
I'd like to make a motion.
Mr. Brown.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to grant the application subject to the CNRs being executed by the client.
It's a motion by Mr. Brown to grant the application subject to the covenants and restrictions. Is there a second? By Mr. Bruno, all in favor? Opposed, abstentions, the application is granted.
Good night.
Thank you. Town Board application recommendation item, Transform Bohemia New York LLC, CZ 2022-010, north side of Sunrise Highway Service Road, State Route 27, approximately 500 feet west of Johnson Avenue, Sayville, 5147 Sunrise Highway. Applicant requests 2 Town Board special permits for fast food restaurants pursuant to 68-302G and a minor subdivision. Site plan modifications may also be requested as part of the application. Good evening.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. My name is John Stalakis. I'm an associate with Sir Tillman, Ballin, Adler, and Hyman, and we represent the owner applicant Transform. With me here this evening are John Martinez, a representative from Chick-fil-A, one of the potential pad site tenants, Ben Plum from Bowler Engineering, and Ethan Chikowski from Atlantic Traffic and Design Engineering. I would like to note that Transform's representatives have flown in from Chicago multiple times in the last year to meet with planning staff about this project. Given the uncertainty of whether we would make tonight's agenda, Transform was unable to make last-minute arrangements to be here, but I want to assure you that they do care deeply about the responsible redevelopment of this site. Before I say anything more about the application, I would defer to the planner's report.
Mr. Colgan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This application was previously heard on June 8th of last year. Primary concerns raised at that time were noise complaints coming from ATV users in the rear yard. Since that time, the applicant has hired security service to address this issue. The planning staff contacted 2 neighbors who raised that issue at the hearing, and both summarized that the ATV activity has decreased overall and in duration. However, it still does occur from time to time. The applicant has indicated that they are not able to accommodate a full 25-foot buffer. The applicant has submitted deed covenants with the adjoining property owners demonstrating that the number of overall parking stalls cannot be reduced any further than proposed as a part of the agreement. Based on the history of the site, the planning staff does not anticipate that those parking stalls in the rear will ever be necessary. The applicant, and speaking with them earlier today, they'd represented maybe they could accommodate additional infill plantings. One other possibility could be land banking them, but again, it's my understanding the applicant has indicated that their client cannot remove those parking stalls as part of agreements with their leases. Lastly, the staff has worked with the town attorney's office to draft appropriate conditions for the drive-through queuing failures. The condition that allows the town board to revoke the drive-through permit after queuing failures are observed has been consistently imposed and has become more important since the pandemic has seemed to significantly increase the popularity and intensity of drive-throughs. The draft conditions offer the restaurant operator a reasonable amount of time, notice, and opportunity to correct any failures observed by the town. And as I'm sure this board is aware, a revocation of any sort of fast food restaurant has never occurred. That's at least as long as my tenure has been here. So that being said, we'll bring this back to the board for their consideration and any comments. Again, I don't know what else the applicant can provide for the board to assure the board that they're making the earnest attempt to comply with the minimum requirements that are necessary for the shopping center in terms of buffer, parking, as well as the drive-through language. So I will leave it up for the board's discussion with the applicant.
So I guess the first one is the language in terms of the drive-through and the queuing. You're okay with that?
Well, I could jump to that. With respect to the curing provisions at paragraphs 14 and 26, the proposed covenant language does continue to cause some concerns for one of the pad site tenants. So, we would request tonight, ultimately at the end, that the board reserve decision so that we might be able to try to bridge the gap there between the pad site tenant and the town to try to make everyone happy.
That's fine. I mean, I support the condition as written. I spoke with the town attorney through Mr. Colgan, and I don't think there's going to be a modification to it, but if you want to reserve and go back and rediscuss that, certainly feel free to do so. In terms of the buffer in the rear,
Yes. And would the board like a copy of the site plan? I have tabloids.
we have, you can send it up, yeah.
We appreciate you hearing us at the late hour. I know it's been an evening, so thank you in advance. So the project is a little complicated, given the site's already largely developed and subject to multiple tenancies in the existing building, as well as the potential 2 pad site tenants. So an agreement to these covenants is not simply between the town and Transform, but Transform must comply with various lease obligations, which I'll discuss in a moment, the proposed covenant may violate. So with respect to the buffer, that's at section 10, specifically subsection D, which requires the 25-foot buffer, vegetated buffer adjacent to any residential zone. So this buffer provision concerns the property's northern boundary, where the parking lot abuts a 25-foot wide paper street situated between the site and the residential rear yards on the other side. These conditions have existed for decades, going back through Google Earth history photos. Transform presently maintains a 7.5-foot buffer along its northern boundary, which is the distance between the edge of the parking stalls and the 25-foot wide paper street. The paper street that is situated between the subject site and the residential rear yards is covered with heavy, dense, and mature vegetation, and I have photographs for reference.
Yeah.
So although there is only a 7.5-foot buffer technically within Transform's meets and bounds, there's actually a buffer of 32.5 feet between the edge of the parking lot and the residential rear yards on the other side. This 25-foot paper street cannot be abandoned without the consent of Transform and all the neighbors on the other side. And Transform would be amenable to agreeing to not seek to abandon that paper street unless approved or directed to by the town. A 25-foot buffer on Transform's parcel would require Transform to remove the 74 spaces from that northerly row of parking stalls. And this creates 2 problems. One, it requires Transform to violate its lease because these spaces are considered part of the common areas. And the lease prohibits Transform from removing these parking spaces and modifying the common area in this way. 2, it requires Transform to violate a 1979 declaration that requires a minimum number of parking spaces to be provided on site based on square footage of buildings. Specifically, the declaration requires 1,208 stalls, and the existing and proposed conditions include 1,208 stalls. So Transform cannot unilaterally modify the declaration. So we can't afford to lose any stalls. In an effort, as Sean mentioned, to increase the existing buffer area or augment it, Transform would be amenable to supplemental plantings of evergreens or at the discretion of the town's landscape architect to be planted between the parking stalls and the paper street along the northern boundary of the parking lot area. And these plantings would supplement the dense, mature vegetation of trees that exist along the boundary and within the paper street, to augment that 32.5-foot buffer area that's between the site. As Sean also mentioned, there was a concept of land banking those spaces and vegetating them. But again, we've run into those problems. They have to deal with the subject leases as well as that 1979 declaration.
So why not as a compromise, you land bank that back row, you still have the right to make them parking spaces if need be? Maybe
Well, then-
not found that. Have you spoken to your tenants who are in there? Are they opposed to that? I know you're saying you have the agreements, but have you spoken to them?
I know that Transform has not received approval from the tenants for doing that. So counting them as land banking might work, but they're still modifying the common area, and that's where we get in trouble with the leases. So, that's something that.
To my question, which I don't think you answered.
Pardon?
You said you have not gotten approval. My question was, have you spoken to, or has your landlord spoken to the tenants? And answer that
I
question.
cannot say that. I cannot say yes or no.
So that's my question. If you come back to me telling them they said absolutely not, we're in a different position than they have not received their approval. Just if you didn't ask them and they didn't approve it, obviously.
Understood.
Two different things. Again, I say land banking if they're, I know the shopping center well, and maybe there's a time that when I'm not there that those spots are taken, but I don't know that I've ever seen anybody parked against that back. It's not anybody. I've seen more than a spattering of cars that may park up against that. So again, they're land banked. You have every right to put them back into parking circulation if you actually need them in parking circulation. So that's the question. If you're coming back to me saying they said absolutely not, then we're in a different position. And obviously we're, looking at the last resort, which is what Mr. Colgan said in terms of plantings. But I think there may be an option there. And also that may then just, alleviate the other issue, which is the fact that there is still some activity back there in the evenings, given that extra buffer with some plantings in it may resolve some more of those problems or some more of those complaints that you're getting.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. And I will note that Transform has put up signage and installed security cameras that appears to have, in addition to retaining the security service, that appears to have mitigated any of the rear yard activities.
Yeah, and I've lived in Sayville and been in a shopping center for 40 years. And I've never seen parking in the rear that's even closely to being full. Occasionally you'll see trucks back there and everything for deliveries and everything, other trucks waiting to be unloaded and that. But very, very rare do you see automobiles parked back there during the day. In reference to the paper street, now, are you talking about Greenbrier?
Well, right. And I was there this morning looking at the street sign. So Greenbrier refers to the long strip that runs from Lakeland to the rear yard parking lot. It runs behind the recharge basin.
Correct.
North of that is what appears to be Karshik Street.
On the other side of the fence?
Yes.
Okay. All right. I still would like to, I would agree with the chairman with the land banking of parking spots to increase the buffer to the back. And it is twofold. One is to buffer the people in the back that were asking for it originally at the public hearing. The other is to screen them. If you do occasionally get some kids back there with the ATVs and everything, it's, 3 times the buffer that you have right now.
Mr. Bruno.
I just want to say, I also am very familiar with that shopping center. I live almost right around the corner from it. And I'm going to say for the record, and I've lived there 38 years, I have literally never seen anybody parked in that group of parking spaces. Okay, so I have to agree with my colleagues. It should have little to no effect on the operation of the center as far as the need for that parking.
So again, John Martinez, Development Manager with Chick-fil-A, so thank you for hearing us. Been in this role for about 9 years and been associated with Chick-fil-A for about 22 years. 22, yeah. And I just wanted to say that we appreciate if we could get some consideration on this requirement for the drive-through stacking. Chick-fil-A is really very intent on making sure our queuing is a priority operationally. And so we've spent a lot of money and effort over the years improving that throughout the country and including here on Long Island. A great example is what we're doing on Comac Road with regards to that. So the challenge that we have is that every store that we operate is operated by one individual. So unlike other franchisees that may get a territory or multiple stores, Chick-fil-A just gives one store per operator. And that operator is only allowed to have income based on that store. They can't be a silent partner in another business. And so the challenge we have here that, quite honestly, I don't think I can get past is that if there's an opportunity that we really can't fix it and a board decides to take away a part of our business, especially the drive-through, which is a very important part of our business, we would be actually not being very responsive to our operator that we're giving the store to, with the expectation that operator is going to be there for pretty much forever until they retire. So I do appreciate you allowing us to maybe hopefully speak to your staff or the attorney, but I can stress to you that it's a really important issue for Chick-fil-A, not only on this application, which I'm very confident that we're not going to be even close to coming out of the drive-through in our leased area, but as we continue to develop locations in the town of Islip. Chick-fil-A has been expanding. We've had good success here. We currently, just for perspective's sake, we currently have 5 applications before the town of Brookhaven, which we're going through. And so our expectation is that we would continue that development pattern, finding the right sites for our operators. So thank you for allowing us to do that. But I do want to stress that this is a very important issue for us. And I can tell you with the language that's currently written, it would be a complete non-starter for Chick-fil-A. So just want to put that out.
Mr. Ruggieri?
Thank you. Thank you for being here tonight. I do have a question for you. It's appropriate, and it's regarding the drive-throughs. Obviously, you have experience with Chick-fil-A's in different locations.
Yes.
As I count here, there's 36, 37 cars in the queue.
Correct.
In all of your locations, have you ever exceeded that?
In an operation?
On an operation, yeah. Where
We
you
have.
need-
Oh, yeah.
You have?
Yeah, so typically, we'll exceed it potentially at grand opening. When we open in a location, you have a pent-up demand, right? It's a perfect storm of pent-up demand, team members or employees that maybe aren't super efficient yet, and customers that really haven't experienced Chick-fil-A, and they're not experienced. So we do things like a grand opening traffic control plan. So we have that already pre-programmed in where we work with the shopping center owner, the other tenants, even the local police. The other time we experienced it was certainly during COVID. COVID was an eye-opener for everybody, and certainly for us. And so we installed a lot of different technologies and operational processes to help deal with that. So I can tell you for sure, as we move forward, and you'll see that on the other locations that are going to be opening in other towns surrounding you, we have larger properties, larger drive-throughs like the 38 that we're showing here. And we're finding is that is definitely helping us manage that. But Chick-fil-A's commitment is to continue to look at that as we go forward. We're not going to build it and walk away.
Okay.
And Comac's a great example where that store was just out of control during COVID, right? I think we can all agree to that. But we've just spent a lot of money reinventing that store, not only to put the dual lanes in, but on the inside to increase kitchen capacity and those types of things.
All right.
That's the benefit that we have. And again, we're in agreement that we don't want to see queuing become an issue either. It doesn't help us.
Agreed.
But we can't have that hammer over that we could actually take away the drive-through. It wouldn't be basically responsible for us to put an operator in that situation.
Well, I appreciate your honesty. Just to echo what Sean said, in all the years that I've been involved with the town of Islip, and I served 16 years on the town board back in the 1990s. So the town has never revoked, a permit for a restaurant in queuing. But the covenants are there to protect for some type of, catastrophe from happening. We don't want, it would really be a severe situation. I don't know if that would ever occur here. But you said something during your testimony that was very interesting. You said that during those extreme periods of time, you develop a traffic management plan?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Is that something that you would be willing to share with us to take a look at that?
Absolutely.
Maybe that's something we can incorporate in a covenant that softens it a bit.
Yeah.
That during certain times, instead of revoking, you have to implement a traffic management plan to keep things safe on the site.
Agreed. And we usually have a phased approach where as the traffic builds out, they do phase 1 and phase 2 and phase 3. And that involves everything from just our staff and traffic ambassadors
to even hiring, local off-duty police officers.
Or maybe you could submit that to planning, and
Sure.
that could be part of the discussion. It's just a suggestion.
Thank you.
Just for the record, we have handed up the grand opening plan, which is their backup queuing plan in the various phases. We did submit an electronic copy to planning, but it was only this afternoon, so a little late in the game.
We'll make that part of our record.
Thank you.
Is there anything further you'd like to add to the application?
No, Mr. Chairman.
Anything further from the board? I think just going back, obviously, as Mr. Frugieri said, if you would submit that information and have that discussion with town staff, I don't know, we'll get there. We'll certainly open to listening to the proposals you have, but certainly just understand from our perspective, what we do for you, then becomes a new standard for every other establishment that has a drive-through in the town. So it's something that we're gonna have to look at. And the last thing is I would just ask you, to have that discussion with those tenants in that complex. I mean, if the parking lot is very rarely used back there from people who live and been in that community for a long period of time, and it may be a way or a solution for you in terms of the other complaints that are routinely received about what goes on in that back parking lot.
Understood.
And again, and land banking, again, gives you and them, at any point in time you may need those spots, the opportunity to put them back as parking spots. If there's nothing further, I'll ask for a motion. Mr. Frugieri?
I'll make a motion to reserve decision this evening, and hopefully we can continue the discussions and bring this to finalization fairly shortly.
Motion by Mr. Frugieri to reserve decision. Is there a second by Mr. Brown? All in favor? Opposed, abstentions, we're reserved. Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Cruz? Motion by Ms. Cruz to adjourn, second. Oh, we do? Where is it?
Above all.
Oh, here it is. Above all, come on up. Sorry about that. We're off. Above all storefronts, Inc., CZ 2023-006, outside of Motor Parkway, County Route 67, approximately 449.76 feet east of Wheeler Road, County Route 17, Central Islip, 0 Motor Parkway. Applicant requests a change of zone from Business 1 to Industrial 1 in order to construct a warehouse. A buffer relaxation is requested as part of the application. Good evening.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Mel Gonzalez, architect, MIG Architects PLLC, with offices at 200 Corporate Plaza in Islandia, New York, 11749. I'm here in behalf of Above All Storefronts as a return to the board. Our previous presentation was on June 7th of 2023. And essentially, we're coming back to address some of the recommendations that were made by the board. At this point, I'd like to defer to Mr. Colgan to...
Has a good report for you. Mr. Colgan.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This application was previously heard on June 7th this year. Primary concern raised at that time was the distance of the building from the cemetery. The building has since been moved forward to within 45 feet of Motor Parkway and would require a variance from the zoning board of appeals. However, the trade-off is that the applicant has since adjusted the setback of the building to 25 feet from the rear property line with a full buffer, with a modest intrusion for a sidewalk to a man door in the rear, as well as the buffer behind the parking area to the east has increased to a 20-foot buffer, but still with the ability to plant 3 rows of plantings. The curvature of Motor Parkway in that area to the east compromises the ability to install 2 rows of parking, which would be needed for the size building they're proposing. It is possible to have the full 25 feet of buffer there, but it comes at the expense of parking. A parking relaxation could be considered instead of the buffer relaxation. Again, it's a trade-off between landscaping in the front yard, where across the way, albeit a little further away, there's actual residences to the south of the cemetery, which is generally a passive use. But again, with the 20-foot buffer and the accommodations made by the applicant, we feel it's a significant improvement and should adequately mitigate any of the truck activity that anybody in the cemetery might witness. So based on that, the staff has no objection to the revisions nor the application and recommends the board grant the application subject to the draft covenants.
Any questions from the board? Anything further from the applicant?
None.
Is there a motion? Mr. Frugieri?
Make a motion to grant this application subject to the covenants and conditions.
There's a motion by Ms. Fajardo to grant the application subject to the covenants and restrictions. Is there a second? Second by Mr. Matamore. All in favor? Aye. Opposed, abstentions, the application is granted.
Thank you very much. Have a good evening.
Ms. Cruz, you're back on. It's a motion by Ms. Cruz to close the meeting, second by Ms. Frugiero. All in favor? Opposed, abstentions, we are adjourned.
Clerk goes.